Tesla drone technology. Regarded as the world's first drone, Nikola Tesla constructed a small mechanical boat and built a wireless transmitter inside of the device that could tap into a specific frequency of which he called the ether that we now know in the modern day as the electromagnetic spectrum, or more specifically radio waves. He then built a remote control device that could manipulate the boat and cause it to move around and float on the water as if it were a fully manned crew. To demonstrate his creation, Nikola Tesla took his boat out to the electrical exhibition in 1898 and made a powerful demonstration that drew a crowd from all around. He placed the boat into a nearby pond and told the crew that the boat had a bunch of tiny people inside that could hear them, and so the crowd began shouting commands that could change the boat as the tiny people supposedly listened. Of course, Tesla had the remote control in his hands as many people came out to see this spectacle. After the demonstration was over, Tesla then told the crowd that there were not any tiny people inside and that he controlled the boat using nothing more than electricity and the control of the electromagnetic spectrum. Upon hearing this proclamation of mysticism, many of the people in the crowd claimed the whole event to be a hoax and forced Tesla to open the boat to prove that there were not any tiny people inside. When he did, the crowd was even more baffled at the idea of the radio wave and believed that the Serbian inventor had control over magic and telepathy. It was through the use of devices that Nikola Tesla had often claimed that he could develop remote-controlled robotics, or that military helicopters could be equipped with such technologies to allow whole nations to fight with robots in place of human beings to prevent the loss of life. Before we continue, I have a small request for you. We've created a new channel where we upload content related to old, historical ruins and interesting events. So, if you're interested, kindly subscribe to my channel, Decoverize, for daily interesting videos and show some love in the comments. I'll read every one of your comments. The link is in the description. Okay, let's continue. Hidden rooms in the Great Pyramid. Almost 4,500 years ago, between 2509 BC and 2483 BC, the pharaoh Khufu was ruler of ancient Egypt. During this time, Pharaoh Khufu ordered the creation of the Great Pyramid, a monumental display of power. Built completely for himself, the pyramid itself has more than a 13-acre base and originally had a 479-foot-tall peak. The construction of the Great Pyramid is astonishing. Over 2.3 million blocks of limestone were quarried, cut to specific measurements, and then placed into the formation we know today. The Great Pyramid is regarded as one of the wonders of the ancient world. In 2017, scientists studying the pyramid announced that they had found a previously unknown void inside of the pyramid that's estimated to be around 30 meters long. The last time any kind of big structure inside the pyramid was discovered was in the 1800s. This new void was found using a process called muon radiography. This method utilizes cosmic rays to locate voids or cavities inside of structures. This new discovery is being compared to the previously discovered Grand Gallery of the pyramid. The Grand Gallery is a 150-foot-long corridor that goes directly to the burial room of Khufu, the pharaoh that commissioned this marvel of the ancient world. This corridor is also around 26 feet tall and sits below the newly discovered area. Still, it is completely unknown what or if anything lies within this area and what it was used for. It could be several smaller rooms or one large area we simply do not know. This discovery is still huge. It brings us closer to finally being able to understand and even just know the various of this truly astonishing structure. This discovery was made by the Scan Pyramids project working with the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities and is widely regarded as the most impressive achievement of the technique used to find it. We know this large void exists, but we really know nothing else about it. Hopefully, it will potentially validate any ideas of exploring the Great Pyramid further, and hopefully understanding it better. Maybe further exploration will uncover more secrets. Scientists think they have detected a collision between a black hole and a neutron star. In the US and Italy, gravitational wave detectors picked up on space-time ripples passing through Earth courtesy of a collision between a black hole and a neutron star. To put things into perspective, the mass of an entire sun is squeezed by gravity into a ball the size of a city. It may take you by surprise that the collision didn't produce any detectable light considering the severity of the situation. To grasp a greater understanding of the situation, we will have to delve into what black holes and neutron stars are. They are corpses of stars that are the result of calamitous explosions. These explosions are known as supernovas, which occur when a white dwarf is provoked into a runaway nuclear fusion or when a massive star is in its last evolutionary stages. Supernovas are actually fascinating, as these eruptions can make a star briefly outshine all of the other stars in its galaxy. After a star has undergone supernova, the core of its remains collapses under the strength of its own gravitational pull. What happens next is what decides what the remnant will become. A smaller core forms a neutron star, a larger core forms a black hole. Gravitational waves are disturbances in the curvature of space-time that create a ripple effect propelled from accelerated masses. This causes waves to emit outwards at speeds of light from whatever the source may be. The theory of gravitational waves was first introduced to us in 1915 by a theoretical physicist Albert Einstein, with the prediction that waves would be conceived from massive accelerating objects. These waves would ripple through the fabric of space and time. In 2015, 100 years later, Einstein's prediction was brought into fruition as a result of a collision of two black holes. This so-called happenstance occurred again in 2017 in the event where two neutron stars collided. The gravitational waves that were endured in August are being theorized by scientists as the aftermath caused by a collision that actually took place 1 billion years ago. In the circumstance that this event is confirmed, it will mark the beginning of a new era of astrophysical studies, with implications for how researchers understand Einstein's general theory of relativity, the deaths of stars, and the behavior of extreme matter. Researchers have a sense of cultivated confidence that this collision between a black hole and a neutron star is not an anomaly. Although there is still so much more to outer space than what we have covered today, it gives us a greater appreciation and a year to learn more about our infinite universe. Tesla's artificial tidal wave. Although aircraft are the main tools of war in the modern day, during the time of Tesla, it was the naval might of a country that was seen as the biggest worry of any potential enemy nation. This led to the inventor focusing on potential weapons of mass destruction that would be capable of destroying any naval militaries via the use of an artificial tidal wave. Discussed in a wide variety of letters, Nikola Tesla had predicted that he would be able to take down the navy of any country using what he referred to as tele-automatons, of which were a large aircraft that would pilot several tons of highly explosive material before diving underwater to create a large underwater explosion capable of creating a collapsible bubble of gas underneath the water and create an explosion that would lead to the creation of waves 100 feet high spanning over the distance of a full mile. There is no evidence, however, that Tesla was able to create these tele-automatons, what they would have looked like, or what a blast radius would have most likely done. The idea of the weapon intrigued Russian and American militaries regardless and led to investigative use when testing underwater nuclear weapons back in 1940 and all the way up to past the 1950s. Sister Maria's letter to the devil. The year was 1676. Sister Maria Crocifixa della Concezione was living in a convent in southern Italy in modern-day Palma di Montechiaro. A New Zealand author visiting Palma di Montechiaro in the 1960s described it as a place of spectacular poverty. He wrote, "The cavernous streets are scored by serpentines of black feces and other matter, and a veil of chalky dust pollutes the air. From the main road the whole plaster town tilts downwards as though arrested in a macabre lunge towards the sea. Once I drove through with a woman companion. She looked once and screamed. She did not speak again until we were some distance outside the township." One can imagine that Sister Maria's austere life in the convent was not much more joyous than the author's description. Nuns in the 1600s took a vow to live simply in poverty as a way of serving God. Arose early and spent much of their day in silence praying or participating in manual labor. With the classic long tunic and veil, convents seemed to be full of silent brides of Christ conducting the work of prayer and protecting the souls of their fellow Catholics. On a quiet warm morning, like any other, Sister Maria's fellow nuns rose early to begin cleaning and cooking for the day. Maria, however, did not get up on time. She had spent the last night screaming and muttering to herself in the throes of something the likes of which she had never experienced. Traveling to her room, her sisters were shocked to find her on the floor, her face completely covered in ink. She was holding a mysterious, indecipherable note. The symbols were nothing like anyone had seen before. All she would say was that the letter was written by the devil himself. The writing was a mixture of strange symbols and arcane icons, and no one could decipher it. It is not known what happened to Sister Maria, but the message she recorded has survived the ages. For the past 300 years, Lucifer's message to Christians has remained untranslated. In 2018, thanks to Italian researchers who utilized a new piece of software discovered on the dark web, part of Sister Maria's message has been decoded. By inputting a wide range of languages into the software, the letter is said to describe God and Jesus as deadweights invented by man. It claims that religion benefits no one and that God cannot free mortals. It even references the river Styx, which in Greek mythology is a river that separates the realm of the living from the underworld. The team of scientists suggested that Sister Maria suffered from a mental illness such as schizophrenia, which often presents with religious insanity and images of the devil. However, this is only an educated guess. We can never truly understand what drove Sister Maria insane. Sir Victor Goddard and the Time Slip. The skies are a wondrous place, and ever since man evolved, we've dreamt of being able to fly. Of course, this is now possible, and thanks to the technological advancements in aircraft, being able to fly has meant that human eyes have seen things that we should not necessarily have seen. If you've ever been to Scotland, you'll know that its impressive landscapes and sprawling greenery can be extremely relaxing and very picturesque to fly over. But for one man in 1935, his routine flight over the Highlands became a little strange. When Commander Victor Goddard was conducting a routine aerial inspection of a disused World War I Air Force base at Drem near East Lothian, the base, which was dilapidated and had not been used for years, appeared to be being used as a farm. A day or two later, Goddard flew back towards his own base. It was a gray and rainy Monday with low visibility and high winds. Completely the wrong conditions for a pleasant flight, as you can imagine. He attempted to navigate towards Drem, but couldn't work out where to fly, given the conditions. Suddenly, Goddard lost complete control of his plane. It plummeted towards Earth through the thick gray cloud, which offered no brakes. As he reached 200 feet, he was certain it was over. But it wasn't. Goddard reported seeing swirling water and a stony beach and was flying near 150 miles an hour. Drem's hangars appeared as a silhouette in the bleakness of the afternoon, and as he approached the airfield, the skies brightened completely. As he flew nearer, he noticed a distinct difference in Drem's appearance. The airfield was freshly tarmacked, the hangars restored, and 4 bright yellow aircraft sat on the stand. One model of aircraft he didn't recognize, a monoplane of a new variation with RAF markings. The RAF had no monoplanes, not even for training purposes. There were men working on the ground wearing light blue overalls, which was also strange as the mechanics that Goddard was used to seeing normally wore tan gray. Nobody seemed to notice Goddard's plane flying low over the airfield, and as he pulled his joystick backwards and powered back into the skies, the gray skies and ray returned. Soon he was near his intended destination and landed. Dazed, Goddard tried to comprehend what he'd seen, but simply couldn't. His colleagues thought he was either drunk or mad, and he stopped telling his story. However, for years later, the airbase at Drem would be refurbished. The RAF uniforms would change to light blue, and a new training monoplane painted bright yellow arrived on the tarmac at Drem. As time went by, Victor Goddard came to the startling conclusion that he'd, in fact, traveled through time. Michio Kaku predicts alien contact. Michio Kaku has gained a reputation as a renowned physicist and futurist. Having written numerous books on scientific topics, gained popularity as a presenter, and achieved recognition as the co-founder of string field theory, he is well regarded as an authority in the field of science. Michio made headlines when he claimed that humans would encounter alien life forms within this century. I think we will pick up a signal from an intelligent civilization in outer space in this century. However, that doesn't mean we'll have a two-way conversation. They could be many hundreds of light years away, so it would take hundreds of years for a conversation to take place. But when that takes place, when we do eavesdrop on an intelligent civilization in outer space, that could be a turning point in the history of civilization on Earth. He claims that life throughout the Milky Way is inevitable, adding that when we look out into the night sky, we must realize that someone could be looking back, also wondering if other life forms may exist in our solar system. Michio also claims that we won't just find any signs of life, but also intelligent life. Our galaxy is potentially packed with billions of Earth-like planets that could host a variety of different life forms. That have already been recorded and verified. The number of Earth-like planets in our galaxy is estimated to be around 6 billion. Michio explains that when we do encounter life on other planets, we would first need to determine what category of species they are, breaking them down into 3 types: Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 civilizations. A Type 1 civilization would be roughly 100 years more advanced than our current state Earth. A Type 2 civilization would be stellar and would be a few thousand years ahead of us. A Type 3 civilization would be over 100,000 years more advanced, be able to control black holes and roam space at will. Kaku highlights the dangers we face when encountering other life forms as we are Type 0. After intercepting otherworldly messages, he claims we would need to identify the type of civilization they are and the threat they pose. Though Michio thinks that for the most part they will leave us be as there's no need to plunder our planet for resources, but they will no doubt be curious. Mystery gas discovered at the center of the Milky Way. Our galaxy is much bigger than we often picture it to be, but marvels like this help put into perspective the vast wonders of space. In 2020, a dense, cold gas was discovered to have been shot from the center of the Milky Way and was described as being like bullets. Although it is still unknown how this gas was fired, we do know that this discovery has the potential to have a significant impact upon the future of the Milky Way. Professor Naomi McClure-Griffiths from the Australian National University explained that the loss of so much gas results in a loss of material that has the potential to form stars. If too much of this gas is lost, then the galaxy becomes incapable of forming new stars. McClure-Griffiths stated that to be able to see hints of the Milky Way losing this star-forming gas is kind of exciting. It makes you wonder what's going to happen next. Did this wonder happen? Due to the black hole at the center of our galaxy or the star formations around it? Whilst those are both possibilities, scientists and researchers currently do not know how either one of these could produce this effect. Dr. Enrico D. Teodoro from Johns Hopkins University described that it gets more complicated the more we learn about it, explaining events like this have been observed from afar in other galaxies. Though the black holes observed were significantly larger, and star formations saw higher levels of activity. Our own galaxy being much smaller and closer means that we can study events in more detail, but such exciting phenomena are much rarer so close to home. With such exciting discoveries happening right in our very own galaxy, it really is a true reminder of how little we know about the universe. What is the Great White Shark Cafe? After years of arduous studies and painstaking research, a remote coastal area between Hawaii and Baja California, not previously suspected as a shark habitat, has controversially been revealed to be a highly popular congregational spot for a mass of great white sharks. Known as the White Shark Cafe, this meeting ground is situated in the Pacific Ocean and is said to play host to a vast group of great whites every year. The cafe gained its unofficial name in 2002 from researchers at Stanford University's Hopkins Marine Station who were studying the great white species with satellite tracking tags at the time. During their studies, the researchers tagged 4 sharks off the coast of Central California. All kinds of great whites have been tracked traveling from the coast of California to the cafe. Males, females, and juveniles together, all thought to have originally come from a diverse length of rookeries along the North American coast. These sharks went on to travel to the cafe during a 6-month period, and what they did there is peculiar to say the least. Tracking tanks attached to the sharks' fins showed that on the journey to the cafe, the sharks traveled across the ocean's midwater zone, making slow periodic dives to around 3,000 feet to feed on prey such as squid and small fish that inhabited the deep waters due to their sensitivity to light. However, once they arrived, their behavior changed. The male sharks would bob up and down at the water's surface as many as 120 times per day and to a depth reaching all the way down to 1,500 feet. Meanwhile, the adult females typically dove deeper and usually dove only during the day. At night, the mothers would stay with their juvenile pups. As previously mentioned above, prior to the 2002 research, this mid-Pacific Ocean area wasn't considered an ideal shark habitat. And the question of why the sharks would travel there puzzled many researchers for years. This is because it was once believed that the area had little to no food for sea mammals. Researchers once even described it as the shark equivalent of a desert. A few theories regarding the reason for this migration were investigated at the time, including the hypothesis that it could be an ideal birthing ground for the sharks. However, this was found to be the least likely answer due to the vast distance between the cafe and any coastal nurseries. Fortunately, recent research in early 2018 by the research vessel Falker showed that there was a rich and diverse food chain beneath the sea that was just too deep to be detected by satellites. With this newfound data, it made sense that the great whites would travel there for food. Nonetheless, even with all this data from Stanford University and the Falker vessel, there are still many questions left unanswered. For example, why don't the female sharks display the same diving behaviors as their male counterparts? Why do the sharks linger there for so long? And what does this mid-Pacific Ocean cafe offer that other waters don't? The strange Harry Turner incident. Harry Turner, a long-haul truck driver, was traveling from Winchester to Fredericksburg, Virginia in September of 1979. While driving one night, Harry saw a bright light coming towards him. At first, he assumed it was headlights from another truck, but his whole truck was suddenly surrounded by the light. Harry couldn't control the steering wheel, and the truck now seemed to be floating. Before he could try to do anything else, the truck door was opened by something invisible. He felt something holding onto him, but it was too strong to fight. He pulled out his gun and fired all 8 rounds. Whatever was holding him down finally let go. After that, he blacked out and has no memory of what happened next. He woke up in a warehouse parking lot in Fredericksburg, nowhere near where he last remembered being. He was still holding his gun, and the empty shells were all around the truck. Although his watch said it was 11:17 p.m., the warehouse clock said it was 3 a.m. He checked his odometer, which showed that he had only driven 17 miles. However, he knew the trip should have been around 80 miles. Harry's memory of the rest of that night came back slowly. Eventually, he remembered being taken to some sort of aircraft. He saw strange creatures who were all dressed in white and all had numbers on their heads. He inexplicably had new knowledge of a star system called Alpha Centauri. Many other people have gained knowledge of this same star system after claiming to be abducted as well. After that night, Harry had several more unexplainable experiences. One day he was approached by 6 of the same creatures who had taken him that night, but he was unable to fight them off and get away. Another time he claimed that he was suddenly soaking wet, but there was no reason for it. Animals began acting strangely when he got around them, and there was no reasonable explanation for it. One night while staring at the ceiling in bed, he suddenly realized he could actually see through the ceiling. On another night, he looked over at his wife while she was sleeping and he could see through her skin. He knew this had to be caused by his abduction. On one occasion, one of the creatures suddenly appeared beside him in his car while he was driving. It scared him so much that he started driving fast enough to be chased by several police cars. He was charged for reckless driving and failing to stop. He explained what happened, but the creature had already disappeared. Harry tried his best to piece all his memories together of that September night, hoping the truth would help him feel more at ease, but he was never successful. He became more and more withdrawn and often had bad thoughts. He knew he would never know what truly happened. The night the devil visited Loftus Hall. Back in 1765, the lord of Loftus Hall Manor, Mr. Charles Tottenham, spotted a ship that suddenly appeared out on the nearby waters and came to shore on the Hook Peninsula. Due to the terrible storms that had been raging through the area, Charles Tottenham quickly sent the butler to go help the arriving ship in case the soldiers were in need of any assistance. Oddly enough, only a young man arrived at the mansion with no other company. The daughter and Tottenham quickly fell in love with the young man and appeared to display signs of obsession. In an effort to clear their hands and pass the time through the storm, Charles offered to play a game of cards in their game room with the young man. As the family and the young man were beginning to play and knelt down from the table to pick up a card that she believed to have dropped. As she knelt down, she noticed that the man had a deformation of his foot that made it look like a cleft hoof. When she asked him about the foot, the young man jumped through the roof, tearing a hole in the ceiling and disappeared into the storm. It is claimed that the daughter, still obsessed with the man, refused to leave her room and sat with her head on her knees overlooking the ocean, waiting for him to one day return. When she passed away, the servants of the house claimed that her muscles had seized and they could not relax the body of and in its sitting pose. Eventually, she would be buried in this pose, waiting for the young man to return. The Black-Eyed Children of Canuck Chase. The Black-Eyed Children are contemporary legends, first referenced in American folklore. If you've never heard of them, you would probably be wondering what and who they are. However, this eerie entity seems to be anything but human. Some think that black-eyed children are creatures of the supernatural, and it's reported that they are often found hitchhiking or in strange places alone. In 2014, the residents of a small area of green countryside and quaint villages in Staffordshire, England, allegedly had an experience with these strange beings. Lee Brickley, a paranormal investigator from the local area, received a letter from a resident of the area who believed she'd seen a black-eyed girl in Cannock Chase. The investigator took one look at the description and immediately realized that their specific sighting had occurred before in the area. However, this was 30 years earlier. Lee released a description which his own aunt provided of the girl she'd seen in the 1980s, and locals immediately drew comparisons between the two figures. He described his aunt's encounter. My aunt was only 18 years old at the time. In the summer of 1982, herself and a friend would frequently meet on Cannock Chase in the evenings. An evening just before the darkness approached, we heard a small child hysterically yelling. We couldn't work out whether she was in danger or not. Nevertheless, rushing to find the elves, we stumbled upon a footpath and caught sight of a girl about 6 years old sprinting in the opposite direction. When they caught up, the girl turned around and stared into my aunt's eyes, then proceeded to run off into the pitch-dark woodland. She described her eyes as being entirely black with no trace of white. A police search was conducted but was unsuccessful. At the time, no one had any reason to believe anything paranormal was going on. The girl certainly appeared to be of flesh and blood. The latest description of the black-eyed girl of Cannock Chase was provided by a woman under the name of Mrs. Kelly. My daughter and I were walking through the Birches Valley, an area well known for its impressive sightings. However, we stopped in our tracks when we heard the screams of a young girl. They undoubtedly gave the impression they were in a state of turmoil. However, they sounded close, therefore we immediately started to run towards the noise. Unsure of the whereabouts of the child, we stopped to catch our breath and tried to relocate where the noise was. That's when I turned around and saw a girl stood behind me. No older than 10 years old, she had her hands over her eyes like she was scared or hiding something. I asked if she had been the one shouting. She then put her arms by her sides and opened her eyes. That's when I saw they were completely black. It was like looking into the state of nothingness. I jumped back and grabbed my daughter. I blinked and the child was gone. It was strange and bizarre. Lee Brickley, the investigator, believes that black-eyed children like those found in Cannock Chase are actually demonic beings and exist for evil purposes. He also recognizes that of many of the sightings of black-eyed children, it seems as if the creatures are leading others towards some sort of danger. One thing has been recognized: the Cannock Chase sightings are the only sightings that occur during the daytime. Whether these sightings are false or actually credible, we do not know. However, you definitely wouldn't want to stumble across a black-eyed child at any time. The disappearance of Aaron Hedges. Originally from Bozeman, Aaron Hedges was a hunter, and along with his friends, Joe DePew and Greg Leitner, they ventured to the Crazy Mountains in Montana in September of 2014. Equipped with 2 horses and a mule, the group of 3's initial plan was to spend a week around the Cottonwood Lake Trail and create a base camp at Campfire Lake. Well prepared, Aaron was armed with a bow and arrows and a handgun. His fellow hunters, Joe DePew and Greg Leitner, carried rifles. On September 3, 2014, the hunters set off. Despite being well prepared, the mule that was carrying their supplies was spooked and ended up throwing their supplies off the trail. It's important to note this included Aaron's sleeping bag. It wasn't until the 5th of September that Aaron decided he should try and replace his lost sleeping bag and set off with a plan to shelter within the group's hunting camp from their trip the year before and recover a cache containing a sleeping bag. However, DePew and Leitner insisted he return to camp before nightfall, as at night that area can become dangerous, and Aaron agreed to return to camp that night. Aaron would not return that evening. At around 4 p.m. that day, Joe and Greg tried contacting Aaron via their walkie-talkies. These were Garmin walkie-talkies, and it actually displayed each of their GPS positions. To the rest of the group's surprise, Aaron's GPS position showed that he was going the complete wrong direction and he was heading northeast. Unfortunately, this would be the last time they saw Aaron's GPS position. After Aaron had still not returned on the 6th of September, Joe and Greg had come to the assumption Aaron was indeed missing. This was further unsettling when, on the 7th of September, a snowstorm swept through the area, plummeting temperatures and unleashing at least 18 inches of snow across the area. Despite this realization, it wasn't until the 8th of September that Aaron was reported missing by his wife. Aaron's friends insisted they didn't report him missing because he was experienced in the area and also armed. The Park County Search and Rescue was tasked with finding Aaron, and Corporal Greg Todd, who was in charge, spoke of how this lack of urgency was strange and that he wouldn't have waited as long as Joe and Greg did to report Aaron missing, due to the aforementioned snowstorm making it practically impossible to search on foot. However, eventually dog and horse teams as well as 59 ground crew along with the National Guard and helicopters joined the search for the missing Aaron. It wasn't until the 9th of September the search and rescue teams finally had a breakthrough. Aaron's boots were found along with a water container, and a nearby fire pit was found too. This was it though. There was nothing else in that area. His search and rescue had swept the same spot the day before and had found nothing. Furthermore, given the severe cold weather, it seems very strange that Aaron would take his boots off and leave them. He wouldn't have made it very far without them either. This was the only hard evidence until the 22nd of September, when officials involved decided that the search and rescue presence be reduced, awaiting additional information. There was no breakthrough in this case until Roger Beslanovich stumbled across Aaron Hedges' backpack and clothing whilst visiting family. The bag contained Aaron's gun and driving license along with his bow and clothing. It appeared that smaller animals had been trying to get into the bag, as small holes were present all over it. It was then, on August 8, 2016, that at a nearby ranch, trailgoers found a human skull. With this new information, law enforcement in the area began a full-scale search on and managed to find most of Aaron's skeleton within just a 70-yard area. Aaron's cell phone was found on his body, but despite best efforts, it was too corroded after spending 2 years outside on the trail. This case is mysterious for many reasons. Given the route it's believed he took, it's not understood why he went this way. After all, Aaron was an experienced outdoorsman, and this was a route he should have avoided. That where Aaron was found was within view of nearby buildings and not too far from a road. Why didn't he seek help? Though it's believed Aaron didn't go for shelter due to not wanting to get caught for trespassing. As of today, the manuscript remains a mystery. The more time that passes, the more speculation and rumors continue to grow. And every few years we can be sure someone new will step forward announcing that they have found a new translation. But with so many experts eager to add to the research, such claims are often quickly refuted. Great minds are puzzled by the nature of the Voynich manuscript. The Cold War saw the involvement of the FBI, fearing it was a coded form of communist propaganda, and still no solution or understanding was found. Will we ever figure out this impossible code? Arguably the world's most mysterious book, allegedly figured out over and over, and still nobody can read it. Linguists, historians, and cryptographers have puzzled over it for centuries and will continue to do so until we solve this mystery. What lies within the Voynich manuscript? UK's Bigfoot. Bigfoot is a mythical ape-like creature who walks on 2 feet much like a man and supposedly inhabits the Pacific Northwest of America. Yet in recent times, Bigfoot sightings seem to have migrated from the States across to the UK. Bigfoot has reportedly been spotted in a few different locations across England and also in Northern Ireland. In fact, Bigfoot enthusiast was recently investigating a supposed Bigfoot hotspot in a Lincolnshire nature reserve with his team at the British Bigfoot Research Organisation. The group, who seek evidence to prove the existence of Bigfoot, felt they were being followed the entire time they were on the reserve and said that it was as if somebody was watching them. Adam took multiple photos that day but had not noticed anything odd whilst taking them. It was only when he flicked back through them that he noticed a strange figure lurking in the woodland overgrowth. He described it was a dark silhouette figure similar to a man stood within the trees, facing myself and my team. I make no claims of this mysterious figure, but my fellow investigators think this could be genuine evidence that the British Bigfoot organization has waited for. Another British Bigfoot researcher named Deborah Hatswell is also convinced of Bigfoot's existence. She created a map that pinpointed all the sightings of Bigfoot in the UK. Bigfoot appearances have been spotted everywhere. Practically every country in Britain has seen some form of Bigfoot-like creature. Everywhere in the world has its own stories, and the UK is no different. Bigfoot, the black-eyed children, and the black cats of the UK have inspired generations of storytelling, myths, and legends amongst Britons. Whether these creatures or beings are real or not, they definitely make for sufficient stories to be told for many years to come. England's Black Panther sightings. Residents of Devon will know the ghostly legend of the Exmoor beast, a phantom panther or puma that prowls the moors on the coast. Those in Cumbria will know of the Beast of Cumbria, and locals in Warwickshire will be familiar with the wildcats spotted in that part of the country. However, these aren't the only places in the UK where black panthers have been sighted. In fact, Sussex, Cornwall, Gloucestershire, Cambridgeshire, and multiple locations in Scotland have all seen large cat-like creatures, leaving residents to wonder, what are these animals and where do they come from? Norfolk has by far the most sightings, with around 60 different accounts of people spotting large cats in the wild. Earlier sightings of large cats are actually fairly credible in the UK, especially around the 1980s. In the mid to late 20th century, it was known that rich landowners were keeping large cats such as panthers, lynx, and pumas in illegal captivity. In 1980, a puma was actually captured alive in Scotland and was taken into captivity as its owners previously weren't allowed to keep wild beasts as pets in their back gardens. The first sightings of large cats reportedly came between 1770 and 1920, but these were few and far between. However, it may have been slightly more normal for Britons to see black cats roaming the wild in those 100 or so years. Many affluent citizens kept wild and obscure animals in the Victorian era as a symbol of wealth or as prizes won in strange competitions. And when these animals naturally became harder to handle than the average mongrel, they were simply set free into the countryside. Now, Britain's natural countryside isn't quite the right place for a big cat to thrive, given the amount of livestock on farms across the country. These cats often choose things like sheep as their prey, which then causes conflict with farmers, leading to sightings and cat mania. Some of these cats have been reported to have markings of Eurasian lynx, which were once a common sight in the UK until mass hunting effectively contributed to their extinction around 700 AD. Yet some believe that these cats never became extinct, and rather lived in hiding, creating offspring over enough generations to make the lynx a credible answer to panther sightings in the UK. Naturally, people have also made up conspiracy theories about the panthers that have reportedly been seen roaming the countryside. Furthermore, in 1988, Royal Marines were sent onto Exmoor to look for evidence of a black cat that had ravaged a farmer's sheep herd. Some even reported seeing the cat. Was never taken further. Dow Hill of Kursong is located 30 kilometers from Darjeeling and is known to be the most haunted hill site in India. While the hill is known for its beautiful scenery, orchid gardens, woodland, and tea plantations, there seems to be a darker side that comes out at night. It is believed that multiple loss of lives has occurred in the area that affect the energy of the land to this day. Much of the paranormal activity occurs on a road between the Dow Hill Road and the Forest Office. Allegedly, local woodcutters have spotted the ghost of a headless boy walking around the forest. The ghost of a woman dressed in all gray has also been reported. Many visitors to the hill experience a constant sense of being watched by something unseen or by a red eye. Some people carry the feeling of being followed with them for the rest of their lives, even far away from the hill. It is not uncommon for guests to get lost in the woods, lose their sanity, or take their own life. There is also a haunted school on the hill that is 100 years old called Victoria Boys High School. Loud whisperings and footsteps can be heard around the school even during the vacation seasons. The physical details of the hill certainly do not improve the creepy vibe of the area. The weather is mainly foggy, it is often mainly silent, and there are no streetlights to guide you through. The one local member described the hill as the perfect setting for a horror movie. Thanks to these hazy conditions, the hill can be dangerous even without extraterrestrial happenings. The disappearance of Jean Virginia Sampere, British Columbia, Canada, sometime around 10 or 11 p.m. on the October 14, 1971. 18-year-old Jean Virginia Sampere was walking along Highway 16 with her cousin Alvin before he turned back to get a jacket from home. He believed she was going to a nearby shop, but upon his return to the highway, she was nowhere to be seen. Alvin reported hearing a car door shutting, but nothing else. Earlier that evening, Jean had been seen by her brother Rod's wife, Violet. Violet recounted that Jean had been at her mother's house, but had left crying. After attempting to go after Jean, Violet was stopped by Jean's mother, who told Violet that Jean would return. Jean was of Gixan descent. The Gixan were a First Nation, meaning south of the Arctic Circle. Indigenous group. When Jean failed to return home that night, her mother reported her to the Jitsi-Ji Yukla Indian Band who, due to protocol, waited for some time to report the disappearance to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The search for Jean continued for 8 days, with police officers from other towns joining the search. Alas, despite tip-offs in larger cities such as Vancouver and Toronto, no trace of Jean was found. A 1971 report from the Jitsi-Ji Yukla Band chief counselor determined that Jean had drowned, and the case was formally closed in 1985, only to be subsequently reopened after the family complained that there was no conclusive evidence that Jean had drowned. For Jean to have simply vanished was as alarming as it was strange, and subsequent events in the area fueled more sinister theories about the case. Her brother Rod alleged that he had seen files stating that a man named Kenny Russell had found some footprints near Jitsi-Jukukula River. Although the footprints were never identified, this was the piece of evidence said to be behind the drowning theory. Rather mysteriously, Jean's boyfriend had gone missing soon before she disappeared herself, but was found drowned in the Skeena River nearby. The authorities initially thought that Jean may have committed suicide, but once again this theory was dispelled as Jean was not known to be a suicide risk. The most chilling theory is that Jean was the second of the first 3 victims of the Highway of Tears, a stretch of Highway 16 where between 18 and 83 people have either gone missing or been murdered since 1970. This theory is supported by the car door noise her cousin heard on the night she disappeared. Worryingly, there is known to be disproportionately high numbers of murders and disappearances of Indigenous women on the victim list. Jean Virginia Samper may well have been number 2 on that list. Disappearance of Jeremy Bright. On August 14, 1986, 14-year-old Jeremy Bright attended the Coos County Fair in Myrtle Point, Oregon with his 10-year-old sister. At 2 p.m. Bright and his sister decided to split up to explore the fair on their own with a plan to meet back together near the Ferris wheel at 5 p.m. Jeremy never showed. Jeremy Bright's stepfather and sister waited for his before contacting authorities. In his room, his mother found his wallet, watch, and key to their family apartment, but found no other clues as to where he could have gone. On August 15th, his mother filed a missing persons report with local police. Police opened an investigation suspecting foul play in the boy's disappearance. But a few days later, on August 23rd, they announced they no longer suspected foul play because of several reported sightings of the boy. Instead, they announced that Jeremy Bright was now thought to have run away with the traveling carnival. However, this was not the end of the case as new and strange rumors of Bright's disappearance began to arise. One of these rumors came from people who said that Jeremy Bright was seen at a party where he ingested beer laced with an illegal drug that caused a fatal overdose. Some people believed this theory since it was known that 14-year-old Jeremy had a heart, but the question unanswered was, if Jeremy did die while at this party, where was his body? No one had an answer. Another rumor was submitted as an anonymous tip from a prison inmate. The inmate said that Bright was accidentally shot by a group of criminals while he was swimming with friends in a local swimming hole. The people responsible allegedly attempted to resuscitate Bright in a remote cabin, but his wound was too severe and the boy died while in the cabin. The inmate claimed that the boy was buried in a shallow grave around the cabin and provided authorities with the location. However, after searching the property, police found no sign of Jeremy Bright or his remains. On another occasion, police began searching every well in Myrtle Point after someone submitted an anonymous tip saying that Jeremy Bright's body could be found at the bottom of one of the wells. Again, police came up empty-handed with no sign of the 14-year-old boy. Investigators then received a tip that told them there was a young man named Jeremy Bright who was working for a circus company in Florida. Florida was known to be a state where many traveling carnivals moved to during the wintertime. This meant it was possible that Bright could have ended up in Florida if he had run away with the traveling carnival as authorities had initially speculated. When investigators made it down to Florida, they found Jeremy Bright. However, this was another Jeremy Bright who was older and originally from Colorado. The last lead authorities had for Jeremy Bright's disappearance was Terry Lee Steinhoff, who had babysat Bright at one point. Steinhoff was charged with the murder of a 32-year-old woman who he had stabbed to death. Before he was charged, there were some reports of people seeing Jeremy Bright in the passenger seat of Steinhoff's truck. Nonetheless, Steinhoff never admitted to having anything to do with Jeremy Bright's disappearance. Unfortunately, all the leads police followed ran cold and Jeremy Bright was never seen again. Mitchell Dale Stelling. On June 20, 2013, 51-year-old Dale Stelling, his wife, Deneen, and his parents were vacationing in Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. Stelling loved the outdoors, spending much of his time camping and gardening. On this day, Stelling planned to make the quarter-mile hike to the Spruce Tree House ruin. Spruce Tree House is the third largest cliff dwelling in the country and was constructed by the ancestors of the Pueblo peoples of the Southwest. The dwelling contains about 130 rooms and 8 ceremonial chambers. This amazing site was built right into the cliff wall and is a huge draw to tourists. Due to health reasons, both his wife and his parents were unable to make the hike, but that didn't stop Stelling from going at it alone. He left for this hike at around 430. The temperature was in the 90s and Stelling did not take water on his hike, a terrible oversight for any hike. The hike should have taken an hour, but after 2 had passed, his family reported him missing. At first, the family was told to give him more time. The park had never had a missing person who did not turn up within a few hours. After the wait, a thorough 2-week search was launched. 60 searchers, including those with ropes for rappelling off the cliffs, 2 dogs, and a helicopter were all involved in the search. In the first days of the search, the dogs initially showed interest in the Chapin Mesa area, but no sign of him was found there. Oddly, evidence shows Stelling had cell service at least the night of his disappearance. Records show an attempt to check his voicemail at 7 p.m. Why would he check his voicemail but not call for help if he was lost remains a mystery. Despite being seen on the trail, no sign of Stelling has ever turned up. Rangers in the area believe Stelling met his end among the many cliffs and crevices in the park. They state that much of the park is uncharted and therefore off-limits. Stelling's case remains open, although Stelling's wife, Deneen, claims it has never been thorough enough for her liking. Deneen has visited the park 3 more times over the years, hoping for new answers that have never come. The ghost of Mount Everest. For centuries, explorers of Mount Everest have reported strange and mysterious sightings they can only attribute to ghostly and supernatural beings. While many of these tales have been dismissed as hoaxes or the results of hallucinations caused by exhaustion and altitude changes, some ghostly elements have come up time and time again from different explorers, so are harder to dismiss. There is no doubt that Mount Everest is the perfect setting for all sorts of horror stories. The mountain is littered with the corpses of people who came from all over the world to attempt to climb the Himalayan mountain. These people fell victim to the avalanches, slippery slopes, and inhospitable temperatures. Some of these bodies have even become landmarks for other climbers. For example, the corpse of Suing Paljo, easily recognizable for his green boots, has become a landmark on the main northeast ridge route of the mountain to guide explorers. However, others claim the dead bodies have led to numerous ghosts that roam the mountain. Many climbers have reported seeing ghosts while climbing Mount Everest. For example, in 2004, Pember Dorje described how he was pestered by the ghosts of dead climbers who looked like black shadows and approached him and begged him for food. His tale was supported by the Nepal Mountaineering Association's president Aung Siring, who attributed the ghosts to climbers who had not been properly buried. Another example of ghostly sightings occurred in 1975 when Dougal Haston and Doug Scott claimed to sense a third climber helping them on a particularly brutal night while climbing Mount Everest. The ghosts shared the men's snow hole and encouraged them during the final hours of their climb. Haston and Scott claimed that the ghost was pioneer Andrew Sandy Irvine, who perished while attempting to climb the mountain in 1924. On a similar vein, in 1933, as Frank Smythe was descending down a particularly dangerous area of Mount Everest, he came across the ghost of a man. Smythe reports that he soon realized the ghost had surrounded him with 2 objects: squat, undeveloped wings, and a beak-like protuberance like the spout of a tea kettle. He argues these objects helped him in his descent down the mountain. Some of the ghosts have been reported as appearing in the surrounding area of Mount Everest. For example, a local villager in Bem named Mohan Singh described how a strange man appeared outside his home and reached for Singh's shirt, but his fingers went straight through Singh's body as a ghost's fingers would. Singh described how during the encounter the man's body continuously changed sizes, growing up to 9 feet tall, then suddenly shrinking to the height of a chicken. Another example is the ghost of Indian soldier Babahaba Jang Singh, who is sent to appear on horseback and still protects India's border against any impending attacks. Bigfoot encounter at Ape Canyon. Ape Canyon is located to the northeast of Mount St. Helens in Washington state. The canyon acquired its name as a result of one of the most famous Bigfoot attacks in history. The attack happened on a summer's night in 1924 when a group of 5 miners who were staying in a cabin came under attack by a group of ape men that were positioned on the ridges above. All 5 of the miners survived the attack and would go on to tell the same story of what had happened that night to the local news outlets. The miners claimed that before the attack started, they were all asleep in the cabin that they had built by hand. As they slept, a flurry of large rocks began to rain down on the camp from all sides. The miners took up arms and began to fire back at the beasts. At first, this helped suppress the attacks, only to begin again a few moments later. One of the miners recalled the moment when one of the beasts came close to the cabin and tried to reach through a hole in the structure in an attempt to grab an axe, but it was repelled before it had time to retrieve it from the building. As the siege continued until daybreak, the miners were able to gradually break free from the cabin as one of the men named Fred Beck claimed he saw one of the creatures standing in the distance. He took aim at the creature and pulled the trigger, watching as it tumbled down into the gorge below. Fred Beck later wrote a book detailing the siege that he and his fellow miners experienced that night. But in the book, he makes the claim that the creatures were actually extra-dimensional beings. Despite numerous theories, the store is enough to attract thousands of hikers to the spot each year, although the original cabin is no longer there and the surrounding area was changed due to the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. Hannah Up. We talk about missing persons all the time here on the channel, but what about a woman who has disappeared on 3 different occasions? The first time 28-year-old schoolteacher Hannah Up disappeared, she was gone for 20 days. She was found floating face down in the waters a mile out from Manhattan. She claims she had gone for a jog on August 28, 2008. The scary part is she was pulled from the water on September 16th. Hannah disappeared right before the beginning of a new school year. She taught Spanish at Thurgood Marshall Academy. She left her wallet, her phone, and her keys and disappeared into one of the biggest cities on the planet. The jog is the last thing Hannah remembered. In an interview, she stated it was like 10 minutes had passed, but it was almost 3 weeks. But Hannah did not move around the city in the days following the jog. She was caught on security cameras at an Apple store where she checked her email. Later, she reappeared at the Apple store, then at Starbucks, and finally at several different New York sports clubs where it is thought she showered. At the hospital, Hannah was diagnosed with a disorder called dissociation fugue. In this state, a person can completely forget all or part of their identity. The person also seems to take part in some kind of unexpected travel. Being found in the churning ocean waters was just the first time Hannah had an episode. 5 years later, in September 2013, Hannah had a new job as an assistant teacher in Maryland. Her parents were informed that her belongings were found near a path and she was missing. 2 days later, Hannah regained her memory. She was in a creek with a shopping cart. She borrowed a cell phone, called her mother, and was picked up. Only a year after this episode, Hannah was on the move again. She again took a job as a teacher and moved to St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It was 2017 and Hurricane Irma tore through the area. Though her home was severely damaged, Hannah was fine. On September 14, 2017, Hannah told her roommates she was going to work, but she didn't make it. Nor did she make it home that evening. The next day, Hannah's keys and a pile of folded clothes were found on a beach. For 3 days, the beaches were searched for her. The search had to be cut short because Hurricane Maria was on its way. With Hannah's affinity for wandering always near water, it's a safe bet she found her way into the ocean. Between 2 violent hurricanes, though, her body has never shown up. Her family never gives up, however. A Facebook page was launched and a GoFundMe was started to prolong search efforts. And on a 2019 documentary called Vanishing in Paradise, her parents hold on to hope. When promoting the documentary, her parents stated, "We never know what unexpected connection may lead us to a clue to locating her again. All it would take is for one person to see the program and recognize her." The disappearance of Claudia Lawrence. Claudia Lawrence was born and raised in North Yorkshire and worked as a chef for the University of York. Lawrence has not been seen since Wednesday, March 18, 2009, and her disappearance remains a mystery. On that fateful Wednesday, Lawrence left work at 2:30 p.m. and began walking home. On the walk, she was spotted by a friend who offered her a lift and dropped her off at her cottage on Helwyth Road. At approximately 2:50 p.m., she was seen posting a letter nearby and then returned home at roughly 3:05 p.m. At around 8 p.m., she texted a friend and accepted a phone call from her mother in which she was described as sounding cheerful and relaxed. When Lawrence failed to turn up for work the next morning, her manager attempted to call her mobile phone but did not receive an answer. At the same time, evidence shows Lawrence's phone was only to be switched off deliberately at 12:08 p.m. that same day. Lawrence was due to meet her friend Susie Cooper that evening but did not turn up. Cooper thought the behavior was out of Lawrence's character and so contacted Lawrence's father, who broke into her flat. The only items that were missing from Lawrence's home were her rucksack, her mobile phone, and her work uniform. This suggested that Lawrence had left for work that morning. The group decided to contact the police and a missing persons investigation began. An appeal was released for any further information on Lawrence's last sightings and led to 2 reported potential sightings of Lawrence. The first report came from a cyclist who saw a woman who resembled Lawrence with a man at 5:35 a.m. on the 19th at Melrose Gate on Lawrence's commute to work. The second sighting was 30 minutes after this when a commuter noticed a couple who looked like they were arguing outside the University of York, Lawrence's place of work. Additionally, police covered CCTV footage of a suspicious-looking man at the back of Lawrence's house on the evening of the 18th and the early morning of the 19th. The man in the CCTV footage was described as wearing a black hoodie, just as the males in the reported sightings had been. Just 5 weeks into the investigation, police formally classified the case as a suspected murder. Despite over 1,000 statements and searches taking place in the investigation, this male figure has never been unmasked. In 2013, the North Yorkshire Police set up a new unit specifically to look into kidnaps and stalled cases. Lawrence's case fell into the latter category. Using new and advanced techniques, the police were able to find additional fingerprints and a man's DNA on a cigarette end in Lawrence's car. The new discovery led to the arrests of 6 men. However, none were charged. With no conclusion to the case, the two main theories of what happened to Lawrence are that she absconded from the UK or she was abducted and killed. The first theory, that Lawrence absconded, is based on the knowledge that Lawrence had visited Cyprus on 5 occasions before her disappearance. The last text message on her phone had come from a male friend in Cyprus. This had led some to conclude that Lawrence chose to disappear of her own accord to the Mediterranean island. However, when the police extended the search for Lawrence to Cyprus, no further information of her whereabouts was revealed. The second and dominant theory is that Lawrence was abducted and killed. On a Crime Watch program focused on her disappearance, Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway revealed that some of Lawrence's relationships had an element of complexity and mystery to them that were not known to her family or friends. Despite her family and friends publicly refuting the claims, some began to suspect that Lawrence had fallen victim to foul play from one of her scorned lovers. This is supported by the fact that police interviewed every male regular of one York pub as to whether they had a romantic relationship with Lawrence. Others argue that it was convicted woman killer Christopher Hallowell who was responsible for Lawrence's abduction. Hallowell abducted and killed his second known victim exactly 2 years after Lawrence's. Psychological research has shown that killers are triggered often by dates. So Lawrence's disappearance would fit into his offending pattern, and there is one reported sighting of Lawrence and Hallowell together. Lawrence's own mother believes Hallowell is responsible for her daughter's disappearance. She has publicly criticized the police for not spending more money and time investigating whether Hallowell was responsible for the crime. Over 10 years later, what happened to Lawrence remains unanswered. The disappearance of Matthew Green. Matthew Green was a beloved maths teacher in Nazareth and an outdoor enthusiast who was last seen in 2013 in the Mammoth Lakes area. Green was hiking with friends in the region and staying at the Shady Rest campground. Due to car trouble, he was unable to join his friends on a trail and instead agreed to stay behind while his car was repaired and then meet up with them down the line. That day, he called the car repair shop and his parents to inform them that he was spending one more day in the mountains and texted friends in the evening. Green was never seen or heard from after this. When his friends returned to find his car had been fixed and waiting for him for over a week, they contacted the Mammoth Lake Police Department. Green had told his parents he was spending a day in the mountains in his final phone call, but he had not specified where. Green's loved ones started looking at the evidence at hand to predict where he had headed. Green had previously mentioned wanting to climb on glacier ice and had a habit of tearing out pages from his guidebook for the adventures he was pursuing. The pages missing were the rugged and icy terrain around Mount Ritter. Pouncing on this new lead, several of Green's friends and family flew to California and to shoot high-resolution videos over the land. Despite best efforts, there was no sighting of Green, and a Pennsylvania judge declared him dead 4 days after his disappearance. Hopes were raised when a pair of eyeglasses strikingly similar to the ones worn by Green were found by a hiker in the Inyo Craters region. But these were later confirmed not to be Green's. With little evidence and nobody ever found, Green's fate remains a mystery. His family and friends mostly believe that Green was injured on the trail and either died immediately or eventually succumbed to the elements. Mount Ritter is an extremely challenging terrain, likened to climbing a stack of crackers that even the most experienced climber would struggle on. With peaks reaching 13,000 feet, any misstep of Green's would have resulted in a fall which would almost certainly have killed him. However, Green was known to be an experienced and cautious mountaineer. Aware of the hardship of the trail, he would have been extra careful and critical in his movements, and if he thought the situation was getting too difficult, he would have turned back. This doubt has led Green's sister to wonder whether her brother was actually a victim of foul play. Green might have hitched a ride from another given his car had broken down or had a run-in with the workers in the car repair shop. Have never been given closure to the case of what happened to the popular maths teacher. They continue to use the Find Matthew Green Facebook page for any further updates. The tunnels of Teotihuacan. Another major site of excavation outside the city of Tenochtitlan, Mexico, is that of the massive ancient structures that still exist to this day under heavy study and research. These structures can range from important buildings, ancient granaries, pyramids, sites of human sacrifices, and so on. Interestingly enough, however, it appears that researchers have discovered that underneath the ground there appears to be even more constructions and mysteries to uncover. Located below the massive Aztec pyramids seem to be an intricate detail of underground passages and areas one could enter. Oddly enough, the existence of the tunnels was not discovered until a large sinkhole had opened up, allowing researchers to lean inside and discover artificial and man-made passageways. Although there is yet to turn up any further study and research on the matter, it is believed that these tunnels can stretch on for miles while simultaneously holding a large amount of water beneath without compromising the stability of the area. Many have pointed to these tunnels as being possible aqueducts or passageways for priests of their time, though nothing conclusive has been found as supporting evidence of this theory. Hampton Court Ghost. Located in the borough of Richmond upon Thames resides a palace that has been considered the most haunted place in England for the past 400 years. Known as Hampton Court Palace, this palace has had more than its fair share of hauntings, gathered evidence, and strange sightings that continue even to this day, dating as far back as the early 1500s. According to old legal documents back in 1537, the wife to Henry VIII would give birth to the king's only son, Edward, at the Hampton Palace residence. Unfortunately for her, the complications of Edward's birth would cause her to pass away shortly after the incident while still on the palace grounds. Given the nature of the king's violent past and the abuse faced by the wife, it was believed that her soul is still trapped on the palace grounds and can be seen as a wandering ghostly apparition carrying a lighted taper. Additional ghost sightings were made following the execution of Henry VIII's fifth wife, Catherine Howard, back in 1541 after the Queen was charged with treason on the grounds of adultery with her cousin, Thomas Culpeper. Shortly after her execution, numerous sightings had been made at the Hampton Court Palace that spoke of a wandering ghost without a head. Although many of these stories sound as if they are from the distant past during a far more superstitious era, in recent years even more ghost sightings with pictures and evidence to match have been made surrounding Hampton Court Palace. One such story is told by the security personnel of whom detailed that back in 2003, during a winter storm, 3 fire doors were being opened with tremendous force and causing the alarms to go off. When security tapes were reanalyzed, the image of a ghostly figure is seen opening and closing the doors across the palace. Encounters with the U-28 creature. During the early years of World War I, there was a sighting of a strange monster out in the open ocean that would later be referred to as the U-28 creature. According to the reports surrounding the creature, the encounter occurred on the 30th of July back in 1915 when a German U-boat commander known as Commander Freya George G. von Forstner wrote a detailed report following his attack against the British steamer the Iberian, claiming that after the steamer sank, there appeared to be a large aquatic animal described as being approximately 80 feet in length and similar to that as a large crocodile. The report is quoted as stating the following: "At that moment I had with me in the conning tower 6 of my officers of the watch, including the chief engineer, the navigator, and the helmsman. Simultaneously we all drew in one another's attention to this wonder of the seas, which was writhing and struggling among the debris. We were unable to identify the creature, but all of us agreed that it resembled an aquatic crocodile which was about 60 feet long, with 4 limbs resembling large webbed feet, a long pointed tail, and a head which also tapered to a point. Unfortunately, we were not able to take a photograph, for the animal sank out of sight after 10 or 15 seconds. Cryptozoologists believe reports of the U-28 monster directly matches the whale-eater cryptid of centuries-old encounters. Over the past 8 centuries, consistent sightings of a creature known as the whale-eater have been made all across the world, with notable sightings being made well into the modern day. The creature has been described as being an estimated 43 feet in length, having an elongated head, a short neck, a crocodile-like body, 4 flippers for locomotion, and a short tail. Since the 13th century, sailors have claimed fantastic stories of massive sea monsters that are known for hunting down and eating whales of all sizes. Cryptozoologists have speculated that the whale eater is a surviving member of the Pliosaurus marine reptile species that was estimated to have gone extinct about 65 million years ago. With its crocodile-like appearance, the whale eater would more than accurately fit the description of the pliosaur and would explain the large number of sightings made throughout history. Additionally, on the 13th of August 2012, a 65-foot whale was found beached on the sandy coast of St. Austell. Before efforts could be made to assist the whale, the creature suddenly died. When experts analyzed the whale, they found that there were deep gashes all across the creature's face that looked eerily like a massive single bite mark, with the teeth-like punctures curving evenly into a U-shape across the whale's entire face. One of the reports was quoted as saying, "Crocodile-shaped jaws lined with big sharp teeth attacked the whale." MV Joyita. The almost unsinkable MV Joyita was found in poor condition and drifting near Fiji 5 weeks after it disappeared. It was partially submerged, but it wasn't sunk. However, by the time it was discovered, its 25 crew and passengers were all long gone with the cargo and 3 life rafts. If you were one of the passengers knowing that the ship you are on has a very strong structure, would you have risked sailing on a life raft in an open sea at night instead of staying aboard? The logical answer would be a resounding no. But what exactly happened that night? Nobody knows. It all started on October 3, 1955. MV Joyita left Apia Harbor in Samoa bound for the Tekalaw Islands, which is about 270 miles away. It was originally scheduled to leave the day before, but it had an issue with its port engine clutch. It eventually sailed the next day running on only 1 engine. It had 16 crew members and 9 passengers, including 1 doctor. MV Joyita was expected to reach Callao in no more than 48 hours. It was supposed to arrive on October 5, 1955. It was already a day overdue when the port of Facalfa reported that MV Joyita never made it. No distress signal was received from the crew, which left everyone with no clues as to what happened. A search and rescue team were sent the same day, and for a whole week they tried to find answers. But they came back with nothing. It wasn't until November 10, 1955, when the captain of another merchant ship sighted MV Joyita drifting 600 miles off its course. It was found slightly submerged and empty. All its passengers and more than 4 tons of cargo were all gone. Based on the remaining fuel, the ship made it about 243 miles on its course before the engine failed due to a pipe leak in the engine cooling system. The radio system was found to have been functioning but only had a reach of 2 miles. Even if the ship had sent a distress signal, it would never have been received. However, this could have been easily fixed by one of the members of the crew. These findings create a deeper mystery surrounding the real events that happened that night. For decades, numerous theories have been suggested, but today we are going to focus on the 2 most controversial ones. The first theory accuses the Japanese forces of having kidnapped and killed the passengers of MV Joyita. The year 1955 was still around the time when Japanese forces were to blame concerning any sea vessel disappearances in this area. That MV Joyita might have witnessed something that they shouldn't have, which made them a target of a Japanese group. This would also explain the missing cargo, as it could have been transferred to another ship. The second theory has something to do with Captain Thomas H. Miller, the captain of MV Joyita. He knew that the ship was sturdy and could at least keep them all safe until the daytime. However, the evidence found on the recovered ghost ship proves that the passengers left at night. According to a close friend of the captain, knowing him, he would have never left the ship even if it cost him his life, and yet the captain was gone along with the rest of the people aboard. One of the most logical explanations for this could be that the captain was injured or somehow incapacitated. This theory has gained credence following the discovery of blood-stained bandages on the ship. Linda Ortega. The irony in Linda Ortega's case was clear to everyone when the news of her disappearance reached major media organizations in September of 2012. Linda had gone for a walk with her brother in their local woods in the Ozarks, a mountain range just north of Arkansas, with this afternoon activity in the aid of learning survival techniques. Her brother, Eddie, was an expert in this area, but his sister Linda not so much. Was a lot of concern when Linda became separated from her brother. Walking through the forest, the pair entered a part of it that Eddie suddenly found unfamiliar despite dozens of excursions there. With Linda beside him, he looked up through the trees hoping to find some degree of positioning from the mountains around them. When he looked beside him again, Linda was gone. The search party was sent into the forest to find her, but with winter temperatures beginning to set in and having hope was fading fast for the inexperienced 53-year-old lost alone in the forest. She was to re-emerge almost a week later, dazed and confused, but saying how glad she was that the forest had released her. This disorientation did not go unnoticed, and the chief deputy of the local region, Dwayne Pierce, said when she came out of the woods she wasn't quite about her head. Linda had managed to use some of the tips her brother had imparted to her before they got separated, but sleeping on the cold frozen ground as she wandered through the maze of towering trees. But she maintained she was not alone through this ordeal. Dark figures in their forest appeared at dusk, silhouettes that moved through the trees, but no matter how much she screamed, they couldn't hear her. They constantly watched. Needless to say, she was relieved to step out of that forest alive. The disappearance of George Smith. George Allen Smith was on board the Royal Caribbean International cruise ship Brilliance of the Seas with his wife, Jennifer, both celebrating their honeymoon, having married in Connecticut just 10 days previously. They were a young couple in their 20s and adamant their marriage would get off to a luxurious start and one where they could continue to party and celebrate their marriage vows. The newlyweds boarded at Barcelona on Wednesday, the 29th of June 2005, and the cruise was due to stop in Greece, France, Turkey, and Italy, amongst other stunning locations along the way. By all accounts, George and Jennifer appeared to be having a wonderful time in those first few days of their honeymoon. After dinner on the evening of July 4th, the couple continued their night with drinks at the ship's disco. George noticed his wife flirting with a man on the dance floor and attempted to intervene. The couple were last seen together when a fiery argument broke out between them, culminating in Jennifer kicking her new husband in the groin and storming out of the disco. The next day, a 16-year-old girl stepped onto her balcony looking to take photos of the spectacular sunrise. Instead, she was greeted with something far more sinister on the overhang of the lifeboats, a huge bloodstain on the lifeboat canopy. Security quickly determined that the only people unaccounted for were the Smiths and moved to find out where they were. She had no memory of what had happened after the casino and awoke in their cabin with no sign of George. She assumed he had gone to sleep in another room, something he had done before. Further searches of the ship revealed no clues as to George's whereabouts. However, bloodstains were found in his cabin as well as on the side of the ship. Foul play was suspected and the FBI were brought on board to start their own investigations. The matter was referred to the Mafia Division of the FBI, with an initial theory that this was a robbery gone bad, with the unfortunate newlyweds subsequently thrown from his room, over the side of the ship and into the watery depths below. Indeed, Smith's family, citing accounts of other men with him in his cabin and the sounds of arguing before a thud was heard between 4 and 5 a.m. when detectives believed Jennifer had returned to their room, said they believe he was murdered. The FBI investigated for 10 years before telling the family they couldn't prove his death was a homicide and not an accident, a decision that outraged and disgusted Smith's relatives. His body was never found. Salyut 7 Angels. In July of 1984, cosmonauts on the Soviet space station Salyut 7 reported seeing a strange orange light. The space station was suddenly surrounded by the light, and it even came through the walls of the station. The light was so bright the crew temporarily went blind. Once they regained their vision, they looked through the portholes for the source of the orange light. Since the Salyut 7 had experienced fires and other types of emergencies already, but they found nothing of the sort. Instead, the cosmonauts claimed to have seen 7 angels floating around right outside the station. They said the angels looked similar to humans, but with wings and halos. The angels stayed close to the space station for another 10 minutes, then they disappeared. 12 days later, a team from the Soyuz T-12 spacecraft joined the Salyut 7 crew. Just a short time later, they saw the same orange light. The light surrounded the space station, and they saw the angels outside again. This time, the crew said that the angels were as big as an airliner. The Soviet Union decided that this discovery should remain top secret, and they ordered the crew not to tell anyone what they saw. Some tried to dismiss these claims by saying that the crew were hallucinating. After all, they had been in the space station for 155 days when they first saw the angels. So they were stressed and probably exhausted. Some believe hallucinations could have also been caused by a lack of oxygen and pressure fluctuations. But how could they all have the same hallucinations? This also doesn't explain how the second crew saw the angels since they hadn't been there long. It has also been suggested that similar sightings have been secretly reported by many other Russian cosmonauts as well. Before we continue, I have a small request for you. We've created a new channel where we upload content related to old, historical ruins and interesting events. So, if you're interested, kindly subscribe to my channel, Decoverize, for daily interesting videos and show some love in the comments. I'll read every one of your comments. The link is in the description. Okay, let's continue. Mysterious Rongo-Rongo writing of Easter Island. Easter Island has long been a source of mystery, with the origins of its giant head statues an enigma to so many for such a long time. Ancient civilization created a disconnect between generations, and indeed the cause of such a societal collapse is still a puzzle with no clear answer. Our further drawback is the limited number of texts and other contexts with which to understand them. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, which allowed a contextual and comparable understanding of Egyptian hieroglyphs with ancient Greek, there is no such artifact available to this ancient Rapinui language. Some researchers say that the Rongo-Rongo was not a fully developed writing system, but one might call proto-writing a set of symbols conveying information without containing any truly linguistic content, or rather a series of symbols communicating limited information. It is thought that deciphering the messages might give clues as to what was behind the island civilization's sudden collapse, with the stories a warning and a lesson to future generations. What is clear is that the Rongo-Rongo was a means of communication that speaks to its tribal past. However, as one of only 3 wholly independent writing systems in human history, it looks like the message of these writings will remain a mysterious symbol of the past to the people of the future for many years to come. Disappearance of Rebecca Corium. When Rebecca Corium got the job of looking after children on board the Disney cruise ship Wonder, she thought she had got her dream role. However, dreams soon turned into nightmares when her parents, Mike and Ann, received a call from Disney saying their daughter had gone missing. Rebecca was a 24-year-old graduate from England who had just completed a sports science degree and loved to work with kids. She had been working on the Disney ship in youth activities for 9 months, enjoying every day as much as the last, when on March 21, 2011, Rebecca failed to turn up to her morning shift. Out of character for her, Rebecca didn't respond to calls over the ship's tannoy either, and although a search was instigated soon after, she could not be located anywhere on board the ship, which at the time was sailing down the Pacific coast of Mexico. The Coast Guard was alerted so that a sea search could be carried out, but this still found nothing. Disney officials notified Mike and Ann Corium of their daughter's disappearance, who flew out to join the search. Mike and Ann were finally told by Disney representatives that it was believed Rebecca had been swept overboard from the crew pool by a rogue wave. However, against the high steel walls around that area and the possibility of a rogue wave inconsistent with the weather conditions at that time of year, Rebecca's parents were skeptical of this theory. Furthermore, their daughter was a strong swimmer and competing triathlete. At the time of her disappearance, the ship was docked close to the shoreline, so it was inconceivable that Rebecca would not have been able to make it to land. This would not be the only inconsistency created about Rebecca's disappearance. Disney provided her parents with one side of a slipper found near the crew pool, saying it was hers and backing up the theory that she had been swept overboard. However, both friends and that Rebecca would wear and questioned exactly whose slipper this actually was. In addition, if she had fallen overboard, it would definitely have been captured on at least one of the many CCTV cameras dotted around that area. Furthermore, with the crew pool in close proximity to the ship's bridge, a fall from that place would have surely been seen by someone. Later, more information would emerge about Rebecca's last known hours. She was last seen on CCTV at 5:45 a.m. in the crew lounge, on the phone looking visibly distressed. As she is talking, another crew member walks by briefly asking if she is okay, to which Rebecca responds, "Yeah, fine," visible by lip reading. After Rebecca hangs up, she wanders out of frame and is never seen again. With Disney's clean-cut image at risk, it is obvious that it would be in their best interest to conclude the case as quickly as possible. However, wayward theories, inconsistent, only make this unresolved case of disappearance more suspicious. Disappearance of Jared Negret. Jared Negret was a 13-year-old Boy Scout who has not been seen since July 19, 1991, when he was separated from his troop of climbers in the San Bernardino National Forest. Tragically, the expedition was Negrit's first overnight backpacking trip with the Boy Scouts. As an inexperienced climber and described as being slightly overweight, was a tough task. Negret grew tired at about 1,000 feet from the top and was told to remain behind while the others completed the hike. However, when the troop returned, Negret was nowhere to be seen. The troop leader immediately led the 5 other scouts back to the base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. A massive search was launched, consisting of San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies and rescue teams from as far away as Sierra Madre and San Dimas. They searched the 130 square mile area of San Gorgonio Wilderness and on the 3rd day focused their search on a 6 square mile area where one of Negrit's footprints was discovered. In this area, searchers also uncovered beef jerky and candy wrappers they believed to have belonged to Negrit. The most interesting discovery, though, was Negrit's camera. On the camera, there were 12 snapshots. All but one were landscape shots. However, the final image was a close-up self-portrait of Jared showing only his nose and eyes. The photograph had been taken using flash photography as Negrit appeared terrified in the image. Some have even claimed to see a pair of eyes behind Negrit as if he was using the camera to scare off a threat. It is believed that Negrit lost his life by succumbing to the elements or by suffering a fall down the mountain. But over 30 years later, there are no traces of remains of the boy and Negrit's final remain unanswered. Dumas Beach, Gujarat. Dumas Beach is an urban beach located along the Arabian Sea. It is 21 kilometers southwest of the city of Surat in the state of Gujarat. It is a common tourist spot but with some dark stories attached to it. Dumas Beach features black sand. The odd color is certainly an appeal, but the eerie beliefs behind the dark shore make this feature quite disturbing. It is believed that the beach used to be a Hindu burial site. The bodies on the burial site were reduced to ashes. This mixed with the white sand caused many to believe this is why the sand is now black. It appears some of the souls of the bodies laid to rest on the beach have not relinquished their presence on Earth. Many people, both tourists and locals, are said to have gone missing from Dumas and were never found. It is widely believed that staying at the beach overnight is a challenge to the remaining spirits who walk down the beach at night. If this is the case, it is unlikely you will make it back alive or with a pleasant experience. One man was mysteriously found lifeless on this beach with his tongue missing. No evidence was ever found to explain his loss of life. The beach is also known for its strange sounds. When the beach is largely deserted, voices, laughing and crying can sometimes still be heard. Apparitions and orbs have also been reported frequently. The way dogs tend to behave on this beach is another chilling paranormal element. They are said to behave strangely, especially after dark, howling and barking in audible distress and trying to prevent visitors from walking further. Many theorize that dogs can sense invisible presences better than humans and how to alert their owners. Even the air of the beach at night is troublesome. Many complain of a feeling of heavy air that fills you with sadness and weighs down your spirit. These 3 spots are so terrifying that many locals wouldn't dare visit them, yet others classify all these supernatural events as mere stories. What do you think? Would you visit these haunted locations? The Devil's Footprints of Devon, referred to by head researchers into the phenomenon as the Great Devon Mystery of 1855. The Devil's Footprints incident seems to be one of the strangest and most impossible to explain mystery event that people are still attempting to try to find an answer for in the modern day. According to reports back in 1855, many people claim to have seen hoof-like marks and footprints in the snow traveling down in a straight line for more than 40 miles. These strange footprints were later referred to by locals as the Devil's Footprints, as they believed the devil had cloven hooves. The strangest thing about the phenomenon is that the trail spanned 40 miles in a single night after a snowstorm and demonstrated supernatural properties no person could replicate. It appeared that the footprints were capable of walking over high rooftops, rivers, as well as entering and exiting small drainage pipes that were described as being no more than 4 inches in diameter. It was not until 1950, after the publication of several articles asking for more information on the incident, that a full investigation was provided for the strange mystery by researchers and journalists. After compiling first-hand and second-hand accounts, they found startling evidence that the event couldn't have been a hoax. In fact, the original belief of a 40-mile-long track was incorrect, and further information revealed that the track spanned more than 100 miles with specific consistencies, making it impossible for someone to have traveled in a single night. Nothing more has ever been discovered surrounding the event, and no creature was ever seen that made the tracks despite the ground it covered. Zak Bagans and the Conjuring House. Ghost hunter, TV presenter, and all-round creep-loving guy Zak Bagans has been surrounded by ghouls and ghosts for most of his professional life. The host of the show Ghost Adventures, Bagans also owns his own haunted museum in Nevada. Despite becoming accustomed to the spooks of the underworld, Bagans reportedly isn't immune to the effects that his area of interest has on people. Dubbed the modern Ed and Lorraine Warren, Bagans paid a visit to the legendary Harris Field farmhouse in Rhode Island, which is the real-life setting for the Conjuring film franchise. The original owners of the home depicted in the film spoke of how the Warrens knew that they had their hands full when they entered the farmhouse to investigate alleged incidents of possession and poltergeist activity. When Bagans entered the farmhouse to explore it himself, things began to go wrong. Bagans allegedly began to complain of chest pains and dizziness, as well as difficulty breathing. Bagans declared himself unwell and described how he just didn't want to be around anybody. He insisted that he didn't feel possessed and how he would know what that felt like. He described his feeling as if something was drawing life out of him into some sort of entity or atmosphere. Bagans, the Warrens, and others have all felt a strange and eerie presence in the Harrisville farmhouse, and it could well be one of the most haunted places in America. The Devil's Rocking Chair Incident. In 2019, Zak Bagans introduced a rocking chair, which he had acquired from the Museum of Ed and Lorraine Warren, into his haunted museum in Las Vegas. The chair, known as the Devil's Rocking Chair, which was the inspiration behind the third installment in the smash horror hit franchise, The Conjuring. However, Bagans decided to close the exhibit after realizing that the chair was seemingly behind a number of strange goings-on, both in the museum and in his own home. In one incident, 6 visitors to his museum had experienced the same uncontrollable crying whilst in the vicinity of the chair, and one guest had even collapsed on the stairs above the place where the chair was situated. According to Bagans, the paranormal activity didn't stop there. During a visit by a friend to Bagans' Las Vegas home, the pair began to experience a strange, evil aura between them, causing Bagans' dog to start growling and Bagans himself to fall into a possessed rant, uttering strange words about God and Satan. His friend then began to experience the same uncontrollable crying before running out of the house. The chair itself has a dark history and a large price tag, with Bagans reportedly paying around $67,000 for it. We mentioned that the chair, the film's title, takes its name from a true story. In the 1980s, an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel had allegedly been possessed by a demon. With his family desperate to heal him, Ed and Lorraine Warren asked priests to perform an exorcism on the boy. Although the exorcism was a success, the demon apparently lodged itself in the body of a young man named Arne Cheyenne Johnson, who would later go on to kill his landlord. In Johnson's trial, the defense argued that he had murdered his landlord because of his demonic possession, leading to the trial being dubbed the Devil Made Me Do It case. What is connecting them to the rocking chair? Disturbingly, the original exorcism of David Glatzel took place in the room of the Glatzel's house where this chair used to sit. During the exorcism, the chair allegedly levitated and rocked, with one eyewitness even claiming they had seen the devil himself sitting in it. The Warrens were sued by the Glatzels some years later after the Glatzels complained that Ed and Lorraine had manipulated them. The Glatzels believed that David was mentally ill and that the Warrens had exploited his condition. This has not been confirmed, however, and this theory was washed away in the sea of mystery that surrounds Ed and Lorraine Warren. However, according to many sources, the events that occurred in Zak Bagans' museum were very real. As they say, the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. Suffice to say that among the many theories regarding the paranormal, the devil isn't necessarily always the scariest thing out there. Artificial intelligence could not crack the code. In 2018, artificial intelligence endeavored to figure out the 600-year-old code, though even the AI could not reliably figure out what this code said. The Voynich manuscript appears to contain between 25 and 30 characters, as interpretations have been varied, and is written from left to right by a single hand. It is made up of 102 parchment folios, meaning it reaches approximately an astounding 234 pages in length. This objective information is minimal and does not necessarily aid in solving the mystery after the original language the manuscript was written in. The manuscript is written in an unidentified language using an alphabet that has not been seen elsewhere prior to the manuscript's discovery or after it was found. Many believe it has been written using a substitution cipher. This involves the letters of an existing language being exchanged for made-up letters to create a code. Typically, a substitution cipher is considered the simplest code and is one of the oldest methods of encrypting a text. If it really is such a simple code, then why haven't scientists been able to translate the manuscript? Scientists have no idea what the original language is to begin figuring out where the substitutions have been made. Bradley Hauer and Gregor Kondrak aimed to use computational analysis in order to find a country the text may have originated from or a language it was written in. Numerous algorithms were trained to pick up the statistical fingerprints of the text and compare it to existing established languages to attempt to find a match. Factors such as the frequency of each letter and combinations of letters were used. Hauer and Kondrak began using this software on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They input 380 languages. This trial appeared to work and be successful, so they moved forward with their research. A computational linguist at Illinois Institute of Technology stated that the results were in debate, but not more so than many other results often published in the scientific literature. The next step in their artificial intelligence testing and research was for Kondrak and Hauer to apply these algorithms to the infamous Voynich manuscript. But this was where the pair began to encounter numerous issues. The initial obstacle is that the algorithm was trained to trace modern languages. The evolution of languages regarding vocabulary, grammar, syntax, and spelling is massive, and so languages we use today are incredibly different to the same languages in the late medieval or early modern societies. Is when the manuscript was traced back to in the 15th century. Another problematic element of the AI research is that while suggestions are made for the closest matches, the probability of this being a match is not considered. Conrad and Hauer claim to have discovered the source language, Hebrew, through their algorithm. However, this was the closest match of the 380 languages they inputted, but was not a certain match. Other matches that were considered close, for example, are drastically different from Hebrew, and so the validity of this algorithm may be deemed very low. The lack of evaluation regarding how likely each language is means that Hebrew may have been the closest match available, but not necessarily similar enough to the source language for a substitution code. The final hurdle, and perhaps the factor that is a deal-breaker in the validity of their research, is that Kondrak and Hauer suggested Voynich manuscript is written using not only a substitution cipher, but that it was also written in anagrams, having the letters within each word jumbled up too. Whilst this has been suggested before, it is certainly not a proven fact, just a theory. Kondrak and Hauer used Google Translate, which has a reputation for forcing nonsensical words and phrases into coherent, fluent sentences. Despite all the indicators that their work should be and would be disregarded, Kondrak and Hauer claimed the first sentence of the Voynich manuscript to be as follows. She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people. The sensationalist media headlines stated that the Voynich manuscript had been deciphered and translated. And while we may have been drawn closer, the flawed methodology of Kondrak and Hauer's work means the translation holds little weight. Maybe future artificial intelligence can solve this mystery. But for now, we still don't. Mysterious plants, codes, and astronomical signs that feature in the book. Perhaps even more puzzling than the mysterious Voynich language appears to be written in are the bizarre illustrations, doodles, and diagrams that accompany the unknown writing. Images included in the manuscript depict strange plants, astrological diagrams, castles, dragons, and perhaps the most puzzling image, an unclothed woman in what appears to be a bath. While some outlandish theories suggest ancient water park designs, others suggest medicinal inflammation or even alien technology. One theory posed by Dr. Cheshire, a linguist at Bristol University, suggested it was a manual covering relationships and parenting written in a code based off of a proto-Romantic language. Dr. Cheshire believes it aligns with the Catholic and Roman pagan beliefs held by many Mediterranean Europeans in the 15th century. Dr. Cheshire states that he believed the Voynich manuscript was written by Dominican nuns. Bristol University commented following media coverage, concerns have been raised about the validity of this research and went on to ensure it is known that Dr. Cheshire's work is not affiliated with the university. However, perhaps the most common guess is that the Voynich manuscript details medical information. Herbal remedies were common, explaining the plant diagrams, and many believed there was a correlation between the position of the stars and individuals' health, hence zodiac images being included. Furthermore, a bath was thought to cure many illnesses, explaining the image of the unclothed woman bathing. This suggests that health and medicine is a common factor between a fair few of the illustrations in the Voynich manuscript. The medicinal theory has been suggested by many, one of whom is historian Nicholas Gibbs in 2017. He offered the suggestion that the images centered health for the reasons just mentioned, but also that the manuscript was a pseudo-scientific women's health manual. He, like many others, claimed to have solved the code and believed the absurdly complex codes were Latin abbreviations and that the Voynich manuscript was written in common shorthand that would have been understood in the 15th century and was not code that needed to be broken. His work was heavily criticized and ultimately discredited because Nicholas Gibbs either reiterated ideas people before him had suggested and his own theories. The translated sentences made little to no grammatical sense in Latin. The dismissal of Nicholas Gibbs's research ultimately means the contents of the Voynich manuscript remain a mystery, but the bizarre images seem to have an underlying theme. The Voynich manuscript appears to be split into 7 distinct sections: botanical containing imagery of herbs and plants, astronomical with pictures such as the sun, moon, and stars, cosmological illustrated with circular geometric designs, the zodiac section containing drawings of the zodiac signs, biological which has depictions of unclothed women in various baths, pharmaceutical with images of containers and herbs side by side, and finally, the recipe section which contains no illustrations, merely lines of text with stars in the margin. These theories are simply based upon where certain images lie within the text. Spring-heeled Jack. In 1837, a woman named Mary Stevens was walking to Lavender Hill in South London when suddenly a mysterious figure leaped in front of her. It grabbed her and scratched her body with its claws. As the woman started screaming, the passerby rushed to help her, but before they could reach, the mysterious figure had vanished. Locals searched for the mysterious aggressor, but they could not find her. This was only the first incident involving the mysterious aggressor with sharp claw-like hands. Within the next few days, several other young women also reported similar incidents in London and surrounding areas. The incidents associated with the mysterious figure made their way to the press, who gave it the name of Spring-heeled Jack. In February 1838, Spring-heeled Jack made another appearance. This time a woman named Jane also claimed that she was attacked at the door of her house by a mysterious gentleman who was wearing a cloak. According to her, someone had rang the doorbell, and when she opened the door to see who it was, the mysterious gentleman took off the cloak and breathed white and blue flames onto her. As she stood there in shock, the mysterious figure started cutting her clothes with its claws. The attacker fled after Alsop's sister rushed to the door to help her, and a case was made against him. However, he couldn't be convicted as Jane Alsop insisted that the man who had attacked her could breathe fire. During 1838, many other incidents of Spring-heeled Jack attacking young women were reported, and gradually these incidents spread throughout England. Similar incidents were reported in Scotland as well. However, over time the incidents associated to Spring-heeled Jack started decreasing. The mysterious man became a part of popular culture, however. A number of novels were written about him and various supernatural abilities were attributed to him. The last reported sighting of Spring-heeled Jack was in 1904. Since then, there haven't been any other sightings. Over the years, there has been a lot of debate as to who or what this mysterious man or creature was. Some believe that it was merely a man trying to terrorize the locals in an effort to gain popularity. Others believe that it was a ghost-like creature that was attracted to young women. Whatever the reality of Spring-heeled Jack was, this Victorian demon has become a part of popular culture forever. Bangar Fort, Rajasthan. Built in the 17th century in Rajasthan state of India, the Bangar Fort is known as one of India's most haunted locations. Past the ramparts into the ruins, you will find a dramatic main gate leading to multiple ancient temples, including the Hanuman Temple and Gopinath Temple, as well as numerous palaces. The other entrances into Bangar are the Delhi Gate, Ajmeri Gate, Pulbari Gate, and Lahore Gate. It was built by Bhagwant Das, the Kashwar Harula of Amber, for his son Madho Singh. The town was ultimately deserted, however, during a 1783 famine and fell to ruins. Today, the fort is known for being a breeding ground of paranormal activity. There are 2 main legends that encompass the supernatural tendencies of the area. The first involves the Sadhu Baba Balak Nam. Sara refers to a holy person who has renounced worldly life. According to this legend, Baba Balaknath lived in the fort and demanded that all houses built must not be constructed taller than his. He proclaimed that if the shadow of any other house fell onto his, he would ensure the destruction of the entire town. Allegedly, the rule was not followed, resulting in the town's demise and a permanent sinister energy. The sadhu is referred to as Balu Nath. Instead of living in a house, Balu Nath lived in a nearby cave. Madho Singh needed Balu Nath's permission to construct a fortress because of his claim to the land as his site of meditation. He complied but ordered Madho Singh to ensure that the shadows of the fortress did not touch his cave or disturb his meditation. But after the sun shifted south in the winter, the shadows grew longer, and this spoken contract was breached. This woke Balunath up from his deep meditation, and he soon issued a curse on the town. The curse prevented roofs from ever being constructed in the fort. Today, none of the old houses have a roof remaining. It is said that any new construction in Bangar Fort leads to a collapsed roof. According to the second legend, Singhai, a wizard well-versed in the practice of black with a Bangar princess named Ratnavati, who was said to have unparalleled beauty. Singhai offered the princess a love potion in the marketplace but was refused. She threw the potion onto a large rock which then rolled onto the wizard, crushing him, causing him to pass away. In another version, Singhai cast a spell on a bottle of perfume Ratnavati's maid was buying in the village. If Ratnavati used the scent, she would fall in love with him. When the princess learned about the spell, she threw it out the window and the potion struck either Singhai or, in the other stories, a boulder that then rolled onto the wizard. Before he passed away, he cursed the inhabitants of the fort. Next year, the curse took hold for the princess and the townspeople when the Mughals invaded and took the life of them. Due to the town's disturbing alleged past, the insidious atmosphere remains to this day. The fear of the fort is so prevalent that it is hard to imagine that the townspeople that the Archaeological Survey of India has prohibited anyone from entering or remaining in the fort past sundown. Currently, people unknown to the area are banned from entry without special permission because they are so prone to getting mysteriously lost. Creepy warnings are posted all over the town to discourage entry at night. One sign reads, "It is forbidden to enter the borders of the haunted Bangar fort before sunrise and after sunset." It is believed that the soul of Singhai still searches for his princess in the night. Another creepy phenomenon is that due to the curse placed on the roofs in the fort, new constructions have allegedly led to numerous fatal collapses. Visitors have also seen unexplained shadows, strange lights, and the apparition of a little boy looking out the window in one of the houses. Many disturbing sounds can be heard through the area, such as the sounds of screams, bangles, women crying, and music accompanied by the voices of people dancing to it. Locals also say that if you stay overnight at the fort, you will never return. If you choose to visit this area, who knows what you might experience? There seems to be a great variety of mystical happenings to choose from. NASA discovers TIE Fighter galaxy. Not that long ago, in a galaxy that is very far away, scientists at NASA discovered something very unusual, but something very interesting, a dream of every sci-fi lover. Discovered in August of 2020, NASA researchers announced that they had found a galaxy shaped like Darth Vader's TIE Fighter from the Star Wars series. The galaxy, named TXS-0128+554, bears an uncanny resemblance to the personal spacecraft of the film's iconic villain. Located in the Cassiopeia constellation of space, the galaxy is located 500 million light-years away from us. The reason the galaxy has such a peculiar shape mostly comes down to what angle researchers can view the galaxy at, and it probably wouldn't look quite like a TIE Fighter if you were to view it from another angle. The galaxy is an interesting find nonetheless, and scientists have actually labeled it as an active galaxy, meaning that the galaxy actually emits more light out into space than what all of its stars are capable of, some of which has captured the interest of scientists. The excess light seems to be produced by gamma rays from a supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center. This explains the section that is thinner in the middle. The wings of the TIE Fighter have an explanation too, as they are actually large clouds of gas and dust built up and heated by gravity and friction. According to communication network coverage on the Star Wars-related spotting, the TIE Fighter galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its center and is blasting out enormous amounts of energy. This is not the first strangely shaped galaxy that scientists have spotted. As technology and measuring instruments have become better equipped at recording far-off, scientists have discovered a galaxy shaped like a boomerang, one shaped like a sombrero, and even one shaped like a donut. The galaxy seen from far away will be forever remembered due to its unique shape and memorable name. Luna Water Mystery. A lunar water stream has been reported as water being spotted on the surface of the moon by an efficient spacecraft likely to have originated from an anonymous source in lunar inner parts. This was made by NASA's Moon Mineralogy Mapper instrument aboard India's Chandrayaan-1 1 probe, which reveals the first detection of such magmatic water from lunar orbit and gave no doubt to analysis performed not too long ago on moon rocks brought to Earth by Apollo astronauts not less than 4 decades ago. The lunar water stream was observed as there was evidence that the moon has water and hydroxyl, a more reactive relative molecule than of H2O. But commenters debate about the source of the water, whether it is widely or evenly distributed and how much might be present. As has been confirmed, the moon doesn't have significant amounts of H2O or OH in its atmosphere most of the time. But when the moon passes through one of these meteorite streams, enough vapor is ejected and visible to detect. Detecting how much H2O and how much OH are present is something future moon missions might reveal. NASA detected the vapor using its neutral mass spectrometer, a device built by Goddard. The mission orbited the moon from October 2013 to April 2014 and collected detailed information about the structure and composition of the lunar atmosphere. To release water, the meteoroids had to penetrate at least 3 inches below the surface. Below this bone-dry top layer lies a thin transition layer and then a hydrated layer where water molecules were likely stuck to soil and rock called regolith. From the measurements of water in the exosphere, the researchers evaluated that the hydrated layer has a water concentration of about 200 to 500 parts per million, or about 0.02 to 0.05% by weight. This concentration is a lot drier than the driest terrestrial soil and is persistent with earlier discoveries. It is so dry that it would need to process more than a metric ton of regolith in order to collect 16 ounces of water. Because the material on the lunar surface is fluffy, even a meteoroid that's a fraction of an inch across can penetrate far enough to let out a puff of vapor. With each impact, a small shock wave fans out and ejects water from the surrounding area. When a stream of meteoroids rains down on the lunar surface, the released water will enter the exosphere and spread through it. About 2/3 of that vapor escapes into space, but about 1/3 lands back on the surface of the moon. Devil's Den disappearance. Devil's Den State Park, despite its name, is a picturesque nature preserve in northwest Arkansas's Ozark Mountains. As beautiful as this rocky wilderness may be, it was also the site of one of America's strangest national park happenings, a disappearance that was baffling, if not altogether disturbing. In the summer of 1946, 8-year-old Catherine Van Alst was staying in a cabin with her family in Devil's Den State Park, deep in the Arkansas wilderness. It was her first holiday, and the family were celebrating her parents' 25th wedding anniversary. News reports from the time of the disappearance state that the child had got lost when returning to the family cabin from a nearby creek. The family quickly realized Catherine had disappeared, and a search party led by Catherine's father was immediately assembled. After 3 days of searching, the local sheriff ordered Catherine's father to leave the party to rest. By now, everyone feared that she'd be dead. 3 days lost and alone in the wilderness would have taken a huge physical toll on most people, let alone a vulnerable young girl. On the 6th day of the search, Catherine was found. Despite the family's relief, Catherine's discovery was where the mystery really began. The girl had been discovered in a cave some 30 miles away from her family's camp on ground 600 feet higher than their cabin, begging the question, how did an 8-year-old girl travel 30 miles in 6 days without food, water, or appropriate clothing? One of the members of the search party, University of Arkansas student Porter Chadwick, explained that when Catherine was found, she uttered the words, "Here I am," calmly in response to one of the rescuers' shouts. Wearing nothing but a swimsuit, she had no markings on her to suggest she had been harmed and was thankful for being rescued. She later recounted that she had spent the first night simply laying in the grass before sleeping in caves, eating wild berries and drinking water from pools. To this day, we don't know exactly what happened to Catherine Van Alst or how she managed to travel so far. The events that occurred over those 6 days in 1946 were anything but natural. The disappearance of Renee McCrae. The disappearance of Renee McCrae and her 3-year-old son Andrew in 1976 is Britain's longest-running missing persons case. On Friday, November 12, 1976, Renee had dropped her eldest son at her estranged husband's house and had then driven towards Kilmarnock, apparently to visit her sister. After turning onto the A9 highway, she was never to be seen again. That night, 12 miles from her last known sighting, McCrae's BMW car was found on fire, empty. Police initiated an intensive search operation for McCrae and her son but failed to find any significant trace of the pair. The only piece of notable evidence discovered was blood on a charred rug in the BMW matching the DNA of Rene McRae. Some witnesses alleged that they had seen a man dragging a sheepskin object near that they had seen a man pushing a pushchair by a nearby quarry. Coincidentally, McRae had been wearing a sheepskin coat that day. However, neither of these leads were thoroughly investigated. As the case unraveled, it became clear that McRae's personal life was more complicated than it appeared on the surface. McRae had been having an affair with a man named Bill. The only person aware of the affair was Renee's best friend, Valerie Steventon. Steventon told the authorities that Renee had actually been heading to Perthshire to visit McDowell on the night of her disappearance. She also revealed another stunning revelation, the turning point which added to the complex nature of the case. Bill McDowell was Andrew McRae's biological father. Investigators now had good reason to believe that McRae's presumed murderer was quite literally someone a little closer to home. Authorities began to believe that McRae and her son may have been murdered and buried under the A9 road, which was undergoing construction work at the time. A farmer with supposed divining skills claimed that the bodies lay 12 feet underneath the road and marked this location with a yellow circle. Although Scottish police later announced that the bodies were not buried under the road, not everyone was convinced. A friend of an officer named Sandy Taylor claimed the officer had spoken to a foreman about a man digging up a section of the road on the day of the disappearance and had shown this man the evidence. The officer was instantly sure that this man knew far more than he was willing to tell. Suspiciously, the man fled to the U.S. soon after. According to senior officials, Renee and Andrew McRae's case was mired in a sea of deceit and untruthfulness from its start. 2019 saw what may turn out to finally be closure for the McRae family when Bill McDowell was charged with their murder and with attempting to deceive the course of justice. The disappearance of Vladimir Alexandrov. At the height of the Cold War, the world became concerned about a possible nuclear winter that could occur if the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a war with weapons of mass destruction. A nuclear winter was a hypothesized severe global cooling that would occur after a nuclear war. Scientists believed that the detonation of nuclear weapons around the world would release so many carbon particles into the air that direct sunlight would be blocked from reaching the surface of the Earth, thus creating extreme cool temperatures that would decimate food crops and lead to a world famine. The nuclear winter theory was supported by the work of Soviet physicist Vladimir Alexandrov. On March 31, 1985, Alexandrov mysteriously vanished in Madrid, Spain while attending a scientific conference in the country. The scientist's passport, airline tickets, and other personal items. There were no clues as to whether Alexandrov had disappeared on his own terms or if he had been kidnapped. Other scientists who attended the conference in Spain initially did not report his disappearance. Some of these colleagues said Alexandrov seemed hesitant and nervous at times when he was being driven towards the Soviet embassy. This led them to believe that he had possibly defected to the West. They did not want to raise an alarm to give him more time to run. These same colleagues thought they would hear from him when he reached safety. However, they never heard from Alexandrov again. In an attempt to explain his disappearance, Time magazine reported that some Western scientists believed that Alexandrov was on the verge of renouncing his theory of a nuclear winter and was therefore kidnapped by the Soviet Union. The nuclear winter scenario was accused of being by the Soviet government to give anti-war groups in the U.S. more power to fight against the arms buildup in America. Some Western scientists believe that the KGB kidnapped Vladimir Alexandrov in order to silence him and protect the Soviet government's interests. On the other hand, in 1987, the head of the KGB turned heads when he accused the director of the CIA of ordering the kidnapping of Vladimir Alexandrov. It was well known that Alexandrov had done scientific work in the United States. And some people believe that the CIA discovered Alexandrov was a Soviet spy and kidnapped him while he was in Spain. Still, other theories suggest that he was a double agent working to spy for both the United States and the Soviet Union. It appears that a number of groups could have wanted Alexandrov captured or disappeared and that he may have had good reasons for running. That being said, authorities never found any concrete evidence to support any of these theories, and to this day, nobody truly knows. What happened to Vladimir Alexandrov? The Great Pyramid or Great Pyramid of Giza is home to many mysteries. Because of this, many researchers, scientists, and archaeologists are constantly examining and studying it. Before our previously mentioned discovery in 2017, there was a whole series of studies going on, but in 2015, whilst conducting thermal examinations of the Great Pyramid, researchers discovered that 3 stones located at the bottom of the pyramid were at a higher temperature than any of the others. Whilst this discovery itself is truly puzzling, it could be the result of a variety of different factors from differing air currents inside the pyramid, even more small undiscovered areas, or perhaps an anomalous building material which could indicate repairs or strength carried out thousands of years ago. The team of scientists and researchers came from around the globe to carry out these thermal tests. The tests themselves are just as interesting, as they would examine and carry out testing during different times of the day to test different theories. The morning around sunrise was a specific time the researchers would carry out scans whilst the sun was beaming onto the limestone blocks and heating them up. They would then carry out the same scans but in the evening around sunset once the same limestone blocks were cooling down. They continued these tests until they found the aforementioned anomaly of the 3 limestone blocks in particular. That would display a difference of around 6 degrees compared to the rest of the block, which would at most show a temperature difference of around 0.1 to 0.5 degrees between sunrise and sunset. This difference in temperature is quite puzzling when compared to the minimal difference of the rest. These affected blocks in question were located on the east side of the pyramid. This could well have something to do with why they are anomalies, but for now this remains a mystery. Stephen Hawking warns against contact with alien civilizations. During the last few years of his life, the famed physicist Stephen Hawking repeatedly warned humanity of the impending dangers we would face if we made contact with alien life forms. Hawking claimed that other life forms would try and destroy human civilization, but despite his allegation, he also helped to launch efforts to search for other intelligent life forms in the universe. When discussing the topic of finding other civilizations, he frequently referred to the history of humanity as so often we've mistreated and even wiped out less advanced civilizations, so why would alien life forms not do the same to us? Despite this, however, it seems that his desire to seek out other life forms was greater than his fear. He was part of a new initiative called Breakthrough Listen that intended to listen for alien signals in the universe, without broadcasting our own. Many scientists have voiced their concerns about broadcasting signals from Earth to other planets. A second breakthrough initiative is Breakthrough Message, which launched a competition with a $1 million prize to try to encourage members of the public to come up with ways in which we could send messages out into the cosmos in the hopes of contacting alien life. Though there are currently no plans to broadcast the signals, the competition will run purely out of curiosity for the moment. Hawking spoke about his fear at a breakthrough event, stating, "We don't know much about aliens, but we know about humans. If you look at history, contact between humans and less intelligent organisms have often been disastrous from their point of view, and encounters between civilizations with advanced versus primitive technologies have gone badly for the less advanced. A civilization reading one of our messages could be billions of years ahead of us. If so, they will be vastly more powerful and may not see us as any more valuable than we see bacteria." In 2010, Hawking expressed such advanced aliens would perhaps become nomads, looking to conquer and colonize whatever planets they could reach. As humans now look to become a multi-planet species, other more intelligent life forms may have already achieved it, possibly plundering other planets for resources and establishing new colonies. Contrary to Hawking's fearful approach to reaching out to other civilizations, other scientists have taken a more positive approach, which are hopeful of a more cooperative future. Andrew N., co-founder and CEO of Cosmos Studios, is one of those more hopeful and voiced we may get to a stage in our future where we exceed our evolutionary baggage and evolve to become less violent and short-sighted. Hope is that extraterrestrial civilizations are not only more technologically proficient than we are, but more aware of the rarity and preciousness of life in the cosmos. Jill Tata, former director of the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, also expressed more positive opinions about contacting alien civilizations. While Sir Stephen Hawking warned that alien life might try to conquer or colonize Earth, I respectfully disagree. If aliens were to come here, it would be simply to explore. Consider the age of the universe, we probably wouldn't be their first extraterrestrial encounter either. If aliens were able to visit Earth, that would mean they would have technological capabilities sophisticated enough not to need slaves, food, or other planets. While scientists have different opinions as to how we should go about alien contact, if at all, the desire to know what else might be out there is something which piques human curiosity and something many of us want to know the answer to. The truth is out there, it is only a matter of time before we find it. NASA's Parker Solar Probe discovery. The Parker Solar Probe was launched in the year 2018. Researchers have revealed that the unexplained rogue waves and high winds means scientists are negligent of something really cogent in the standard models of the Sun. NASA's Parker Solar Probe maneuvered closer to the Sun than any previous mission, though the Sun is in the center of the solar system and its radiation has birthed the existence of Earth. It is one of the most undiscovered items in space because of its immense heat and radiation. During these two encounters, Parker traveled within 15 million miles of the Sun's surface, far exceeding the 25 million-mile record first set by NASA's Helios 2 mission in 1976. Parker has also acclaimed the title of the fastest human-made object in history from Helios 2 as it surfaced near the Sun at over 153,000 miles per hour. In a jaw-dropping discovery, Parker detected new phenomena within a quarter of an astronomical unit, the distance between Earth and the Sun of the solar surface. At that distance, the probe reported that the solar wind, which is a stream of charged particles emitted by the Sun, was rotating around the star at speeds far beyond what models had estimated. To everyone's big surprise, by the time it got to the closest approach, the solar wind was flowing between 35 and 50 kilometers per second around the Sun. That's something like 15 to 20 times faster than the standard solar models predict. So scientists are missing something really fundamental in the rigid standard models of the Sun, how it rotates and how the wind escapes, which is discovered to be really interesting. Park was also struck by a series of extremely intense alpha waves in the solar wind. Interplanetary missions have long observed far less energetic alpha waves, which are waves that circulate through magnetized plasma from the Sun. But Parker is the first to brace the huge rogue waves near the star. It was reported that every now and then, suddenly within seconds, the speed of the wind would leap up by about 300,000 miles an hour. Then for seconds or hundreds of seconds, the spacecraft would sit there washed by this. It goes away. These spurs are so forcible that they distort and twist the magnetic field as they pass through it. It gives one a sense of just how much energy is dissipated in these rogue waves as they go by compared to the regular Alvin waves that have been reported earlier. Though the mechanism behind these waves is still a mystery, the great force of them may help elucidate two of the most persistent mysteries about the Sun. Why is solar corona or the atmosphere about 1,000 times hotter than its surface? And why does the solar wind suddenly accelerate to supersonic speeds at a certain distance from the Sun? Scientists suspect that a complex process dumps heat and energy into the solar corona. The newly detected rogue waves might be a portion of this dynamic. In initial analysis by scientists, they're carrying a great mass of energy, so they are very promising as an energy source. It cannot in any way be acclaimed that astronomers have solved this mystery, but some very surprising results have been made to paint the path to closing this mystery. Yang Liwei. The first strange story is of Yang Liwei. Yang Liwei was the first man sent into space by China. As a result of this mission known as Xingzhou 5, China became the third independent country to send humans into space. It was on this mission that Yang Liwei heard some unsettling sounds. He recalled that the noises sounded as if they were caused by someone knocking the body of the spaceship, which neither came from outside nor inside the spacecraft. Understandably, this caused Yang some concern. He went to look out of the spacecraft's portal, seeking a reasonable explanation for the troubling knocking sounds. However, nothing could explain the strange sounds. After safely returning to Earth, Yang set about trying to find an explanation for the sounds with the help of top scientists and space experts. Professor Goh Che-hyang, an expert in space engineering at the University of Singapore, has speculated that the knocking may have been caused by something hitting the spacecraft, such as space debris. However, no one has been able to verify this. One of his colleagues, Wei Sing-so, presented a different explanation, suggesting that the strange sounds could have been a result of expansion or contraction of the spaceship, especially since the temperature could change considerably within orbit. Interestingly, similar knocking sounds have been heard on other Chinese space expeditions, including ones taking place in 2005 and 2008. The fact that similar sounds have been heard on other Chinese space expeditions suggests that perhaps there is an issue common to many Chinese spacecrafts, which is responsible for the sounds. Fortunately, there have been no major incidents that posed any danger on these voyages, meaning that the strange sounds were possibly nothing for the astronauts to worry about. Many people believe that space must be totally silent due to the lack of air or water particles for sound waves to travel through. However, if accounts by other astronauts are anything to go by, hearing sounds in space is certainly not uncommon. Other examples of sounds heard in space include a strange noise heard during a test flight for the moon landing mission in 1969, after the spacecraft had been cut off from radio contact with Earth. The unearthly sounds were described as space music, and only recently has a recording of the sounds been released to the public. Theories abound as to what could have caused the strange noises heard by Yang Liwei. From logical explanations to the more left-field possibility of alien forces trying to enter Yang's spacecraft. Yang is now a major general in China's Air Force, and says he has never again heard sounds similar to those which he heard in space. Ultimately, we may never know what caused these mysterious sounds. The mystery of the fast radio burst. April 28, 2020 saw a sensational event of fast radio burst, also known as FRB. A combination of radio and X-ray energy sources were produced from neutron star SGR 193 plus 2154, found in the constellation Vulpecula in the Milky Way. The last FRB occurred from the same dead star 30,000 years ago. And whilst other instances are traced to stars hundreds of light years away, this fast radio burst can be found within our galaxy only 30,000 light years away from Earth. Other than being a rare event, what is so exciting about an FRB? This FRB lasted only approximately half a second, but prompted global alarms within the burst alert system. The energy recorded within mere milliseconds exceeds that of the Sun created for a century. Scientists are unsure as to the cause of such rapid energy outbursts, though speculation ranges from the collision of black holes to the emissions from spacecrafts from another life form. The burst alert system allows for quick action to be taken, facilitating investigation in the prime time for discovery immediately after the event. The lead author of the FRB study, Sandro Marigetti, stated that this was the first time we had ever seen a link between magnetars and fast radio bursts. This marks an event that will go down in scientific history. Fast radio bursts were first discovered in 2007 and remain to be both a fascinating and puzzling subject within astronomy. In the first observation and interaction scientists had with this event, only X-rays were detected and recognized until a year later, a magnetar. A neutron star with a stronger than expected magnetic field became active and ejected both radio waves and X-rays. The majority of fast radio bursts that have occurred relatively recently have been traced back to magnetars, suggesting a correlation between the expulsion of these radio waves and X-rays and the intense electromagnetic fields characteristic of a magnetar. Such thrilling scientific wonders and potential for such marvelous breakthroughs and discoveries, this is a testament to the wonders the universe and our galaxy hold. 2020 has without a doubt been an eventful year, but the odd happenings and changing definitions of the ordinary extend past us humans being stuck at home. It is remarkable to remember that exhilarating phenomena in our galaxy are occurring as we speak, and the unknown happenings upon Earth continue to be investigated. We continue to stumble upon the strange and unusual, asking questions we didn't know we needed to ask. What mysteries await us in 2021?